Jacob and the girls were halfway through lunch in the school cafeteria when Scott joined them, noticeably alone. Lydia glanced at him, unimpressed. "Where's your sarcastic half?" Scott set his tray down and Saturday with his girlfriend. Allison's head snapped up. "Girlfriend? Since when does Stiles have a girlfriend?" "Since yesterday." Lydia leaned forward. "Ooh." Scott looked at Jacob. "Erica Reyes." Jacob told him to ask her out. Allison frowned. "You know Erica has epilepsy, right?" "I know," Jacob replied calmly. "And if she wants the bite, we can heal her. But that's her choice. For now, we'll let things play out." "But the bite can kill people," Allison said. "What if it goes wrong?" "Then we tell her the risks," Jacob said simply. "She decides. That's how it should be." Allison nodded slowly. "I just hope things work out for them." Jacob turned to Scott. "What about you? Found a girlfriend yet?" Scott sighed. "No. Every girl in this school only has eyes for you." Jacob smirked. "Occupational hazard." Allison and Lydia glanced around the cafeteria. More than a few girls were staring in Jacob's direction. They exchanged a look and shook their heads. This was nothing new. Scott stabbed his food in frustration. "By the way," Jacob said casually, "did you help Jackson get the bite?" "Not yet," Scott replied. "Peter's been in a mood." "I'll wait." "I figured." They finished lunch and headed back to class. After school, they gathered near the front gate. "Jay, let's go shopping," Lydia said brightly. Jacob shook his head instantly. "Can't. Stiles needs me." Stiles blinked. "I do." Jacob shot him a sharp look. "Why, yeah," Stiles said quickly. "Totally. I need help with stuff." Lydia narrowed her eyes. "What stuff?" Jacob cut in. "See you at home." He turned to the driver. "Cogman, take them." Before Lydia could protest, Jacob grabbed Stiles and dragged him toward the Jeep. "Jay, get back here." Lydia called. "Don't look back," Jacob muttered. "Just keep walking. She's calling you." "No, she's not." They piled into the Jeep, Scott climbed in after them, and Stiles drove off. Lydia stomped her foot. He escaped. Allison laughed. "Let him go. We don't need to drag him everywhere." "I like it when he shops with us," Lydia said, pouting. "He looks so miserable." Allison hooked her arm through Lydia's. "Come on. I need to buy things for the house." Lydia brightened instantly. "And since Jay's rich, we're buying expensive things." They climbed into the Rolls-Royce and drove off. Inside the Jeep, Stiles glanced at Jacob through the mirror. "Why are you running from your girlfriends?" "Because shopping is torture," Jacob replied. "You'll understand soon." "How's Erica?" Stiles smiled softly. "Good. She's shy but nice. I think I really like her." "Good," Jacob said. "Once Derek becomes alpha, I'll have him give her the bite." "Not Peter. I don't trust that guy." "Yeah," Stiles agreed. "Keep Peter far away from her." "You really think Derek will be alpha?" "Eventually. Peter's going to clash with the Argent family. When that happens, Derek will step in." "I'm not rushing anything," Stiles said. "We just started dating." Scott cut in, irritated. "Can you drop me at the animal clinic?" Stiles nodded and turned the wheel. On the way, Jacob told them about the wizard and the hunters. By the time he finished, both Scott and Stiles were staring at him. Jacob raised an eyebrow. "What? You killed all of them?" Stiles asked. "They tried to kill me," Jacob replied flatly. "So yes." Scott swallowed. "Was the wizard strong?" "Not to me." "To you?" "Very. He could have killed Peter easily." "That's terrifying," Stiles muttered. At the animal clinic, they stepped inside. Deaton emerged from his office, mid-sentence, then froze when his eyes landed on Jacob. A heavy pressure filled the room. Jacob clicked his tongue inwardly. "I really need a way to suppress this." Scott waved a hand. "Doc, you okay?" Deaton snapped out of it. "Ah, yes." "Who's your friend?" "Jacob," Scott said. "He moved here a month ago." Deaton stared again. Jacob leaned behind Stiles. "Stiles, let's leave. Your boss is giving me serial killer vibes." Stiles burst out laughing. Deaton flushed. "I like women. Older women." "Still creepy," Jacob said, already walking away. "Good night, Scott." He dragged Stiles out with him. Scott sighed. "Sorry, document." "He's like that." Back in the Jeep, Stiles glanced at him. "So, Deaton's supernatural?" "Druid," Jacob said. "Healers. Nature magic. Usually neutral." "Usually?" "There are bad ones." "Drax." "Very bad." Stiles paled. "And he's not one." If he were, I'd know instantly. Stiles relaxed. Good. I'll read that bestiary you gave me. Make Scott read it too. Deal. So Stiles said, grinning. Home? No. Arcade. Stiles smiled wide. Perfect. They drove off, spending the next hour battling each other in racing games, pinball, and Pac-Man, laughter echoing far louder than any worry for what waited ahead. Jacob and Stiles spent a couple of hours at the arcade before finally calling it quits and climbing back into the Jeep. Let's grab some food, Stiles said as he started the engine. And we'll take dinner back for my dad. Works for me, Jacob replied. I'm starving. Stiles snorted. By starving, you mean consuming an amount of food that violates several health codes. Jacob grinned. Relax. I'll behave. Mostly. Just take me somewhere with a food challenge. They pulled into a diner a few minutes later. Jacob waved over the waitress. So, he said cheerfully, tell me about your food challenge. She smiled, clearly amused. 2-pound burger, 1 pound of fries, a large plate of mac and cheese, a bucket of chicken tenders, and a large milkshake. All in 30 minutes. Jacob nodded. Easy. Bring it. The waitress raised an eyebrow. You sure about that, honey? Very sure. Stiles sighed and wandered off to order his own food. They never know what's coming, he muttered. When the food arrived, it drew a small crowd. Jacob rolled up his sleeves like he was about to perform surgery. You're about to witness greatness, he told the onlookers. He ate steadily, deliberately not rushing. 10 minutes in, the burger and fries were gone. 15 minutes later, the rest followed, Jacob pretending to struggle just enough to keep the crowd entertained. Stiles watched from a nearby table, shaking his head. If they knew how much he actually eats, they'd call the National Guard. When Jacob finished, the diner erupted in applause. He posed for a picture, accepted a free t-shirt, and earned a spot on the Wall of Fame. Afterward, they packed up dinner for Sheriff Stalinsky and headed out. Stiles dropped Jacob off at home, both of them in good spirits. Elsewhere, Scott collapsed onto his bed after his shift at the clinic, only for his door to fly open moments later. Scott, I'll be late tonight, Melissa announced. Scott blinked. Oh, why do you look so dressed up? What? Is something wrong with my hair? No, Scott said quickly. You look great. Just what? Melissa hesitated, then sighed. Because I'm going out to dinner. With a man. An adult man. Scott stiffened. Who? A medical rep from the hospital, she said. We talked, one thing led to another, and now I'm panicking because I skipped the gym last week. Scott opened his mouth to ask more when the doorbell rang. Melissa froze. That's him. Scott, please, just answer the door. Be nice. Scott went downstairs and opened it. Peter Hale stood there, smirking. Scott's eyes flashed. What are you doing here? I'm taking your mother to dinner. No, you're not, Scott growled. I'll call Jacob. Peter remained calm. Go ahead. I promised him I wouldn't hurt you. And I won't hurt her either. I just want dinner. If you touch her. Scott, Peter interrupted. I was in a coma for 6 years. Forgive me for wanting one normal evening. Melissa called from upstairs. Scott, are you letting him in? Peter stepped inside before Scott could protest. Melissa came down moments later, grabbed her purse, and took Peter's arm. Have a good night, Scott muttered. She smiled. Thank you. They drove off. Scott stared after them, then pulled out his phone. He hesitated and called Stiles instead. Stiles had just parked in front of Jacob's house when Scott explained everything. Say no more, Stiles said. I'll intercept him. He hung up and glanced at Jacob. You heard that, right? I did, Jacob said. I'll follow in my car. Why didn't Scott call you? Jacob shrugged. Probably afraid his mom would meet me. Stiles didn't argue. They drove for several minutes before Stiles swerved and clipped a parked car, forcing Peter to stop as well. Jacob stepped out just as Melissa started arguing with Stiles. Peter turned and froze when he saw Jacob. Jacob walked over, clapped a hand on Peter's shoulder, and spoke calmly. Dangerously so. Explain. And don't lie. I wasn't going to hurt her, Peter said quickly. I just wanted to scare Scott a little. Jacob's claws slid into Peter's shoulder. Were you planning to bite her? No, Peter hissed. I swear. Satisfied, Jacob stepped back. Leave. And don't come near her again. Peter didn't hesitate. He fled. Melissa turned on Stiles. Are you happy now? Can I have one date? Tears slipped down her face. Stiles froze, guilt hitting him hard. Jacob stepped forward, gently wiping away her tears. No need to cry over someone like that. How about I take you to dinner instead? Stiles internally screamed. Melissa blinked at Jacob. Who are you? Jacob, Scott's friend. She narrowed her eyes. So you helped ruin my date too? We had a reason, Jacob said calmly. I'll explain later. For now, let me make it up to you. She hesitated, then sighed. Just dinner. Just dinner, Jacob agreed. He opened the car door for her and drove off. Scott arrived moments later. Where's my mom? Stiles swallowed. Safe. But she's on a date. With who? Jacob. Scott screamed. He called Jacob immediately. Oh, hey, Scott, Jacob said cheerfully. Don't worry, Melissa's fine. I'll bring her home before midnight. The line went dead. Scott howled in despair. Stiles dragged him into the Jeep. Okay, let's get you home. As they drove, Stiles spoke gently. She was really hurt, Scott. Maybe it's time you told her the truth. Scott stared out the window. I just hope she doesn't hate me. She won't, Stiles said. But she deserves to know. Scott said nothing.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to FanFic Canon. Thanks for hitting play. I'm thrilled to bring this fan-made story to life for you. If you enjoy the ride and want more narrated fanfics, smash, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss an episode. And if you want audiobook of a novel of your choice, join my Patreon. Request any title that's freely available online, and I'll produce a full narration just for you. Now, let's dive into today's adventure.
The date, as Jacob had promised, was not romantic. It was a simple, pleasant evening designed to lift Melissa's spirits. They shared a comfortable dinner at a quiet restaurant, then saw a light-hearted comedy at the cinema. The shared laughter seemed to wash away her lingering frustration from earlier. After the movie, they took a stroll through the softly lit town square. The night air was cool, and a comfortable silence settled between them before Jacob spoke. You know, I envy Scott for having an amazing mom like you, Jacob said. Melissa smiled. Well, I'm not that amazing. I'm just trying to give him the best life I can and hoping he won't blame me for the things I couldn't provide. Don't sell yourself short, Melissa, Jacob replied. You are an amazing parent, and I know Scott loves you more than anything. You should know he's a grown man now, so don't push yourself too hard. If you have any problems, tell him. He might be able to help. Melissa sighed. I can't tell him about my problems. That will just distract him from school, and I don't want that. And he's not grown. To me, he's still a baby. Jacob smiled gently. Like I said, you're a good mom, but you should trust him more. Even if you don't tell him all your problems, at least talk to him and go out with him from time to time. It might help with your loneliness. Maybe, Melissa conceded. Now, tell me about your parents. I think I want to meet the mother who raised an amazing kid like you. Then I have to disappoint you, he said, his gaze fixed on the distant lights. My parents died in an accident 8 years ago. Melissa's step faltered slightly. I'm so sorry, Jacob. I didn't know. He gave a small, wistful smile. It's okay. I miss them. Every day, I really do. But life has to go on, right? I can't just stop living because they died. Melissa looked at him with deep sympathy. Who are you living with now? Jacob chuckled. Don't give me that sad look, Melissa. Although I miss my parents, I'm really happy. I live with an old butler. He's a bit crazy, but he's fun to be around. And I'm kind of already married. Melissa was shocked. What? Married? Jacob smirked. Yes, kind of. Melissa sighed. Do you even know what marriage is, kid? That's not something you should rush into, and you're still way too young for that. Before Jacob could say anything, his phone rang for what felt like the 1,000th time. He pulled it out, looked at the screen, and said, Let's go back. It's your son. If we ignore him any longer, he might lose control and go crazy. With that, they walked back to Jacob's car and drove to Scott's house. When Jacob's Camaro pulled up, Scott was pacing on the front lawn like a caged animal, with Stiles leaning against the Jeep, watching the scene with an amused smirk. The moment Melissa stepped out of the car, Scott stormed over. Mom, you're finally back. What did you two do? I just took her to dinner, Scott. And that's it, Jacob stated calmly, cutting him off as he got out of the driver's side. Before Scott could say anything, Melissa reached out, caught her son's ear, and gave it a sharp, motherly twist. Ow, Mom, let's not talk about you ruining my date tonight, she said, her voice low and firm. But are you seriously thinking I would date Jacob? He's 16, Scott. What kind of person do you think I am? Scott's anger instantly deflated into shame. I didn't mean you're a bad person, but Jacob is a playboy. Melissa released his now red ear. What do you mean? Scott rubbed his ear. He's dating 2 girls at the same time, and all the girls in school want to date him. What? Melissa said, then looked at Jacob. You told me you were married. Jacob shrugged. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you I'm married to 2 girls. Or maybe 3 if I count Malia. This time, Melissa caught Jacob's ear. Are you playing with other people's daughters? I thought you were a good kid. Jacob just smiled, unfazed by her twisting his ear. I'm not playing with them. I can't help myself. It's what I am, and they already know. They're okay with it. I even told the parents of one of them. Well, her parents tried to kill me a few nights ago, but we're all good now. Melissa let go of his ear, her expression a mix of shock and concern. What do you mean? It is what you are. And did someone really try to kill you? Did you tell the cops? There's no need to tell the cops. Jacob said, like I said, we're all good now. They even came to my house yesterday, although they had to drag Allison's father away when they were leaving. It was hilarious. Stiles piped up. What did you do to him? Nothing. Jacob replied. Allison moved in with me, and he didn't like that. He was crying and wanted to take his little girl with him, but Victoria and Kate dragged him away. Did the Argents really try to kill you? Why didn't you tell us? Stiles asked. Jacob shrugged. It's a family thing, Stiles. I can't tell you everything that happens in my family. Melissa cleared her throat, fixing a stern gaze on all 3 of them. Boys, you have some explaining to do. Scott froze and started panicking. Jacob sighed and patted his shoulder. It's time to tell her. He then gently took Melissa's hand and guided her inside the house. You need to be sitting down for what we're about to tell you. In the living room, they all sat. Melissa looked at them expectantly. Okay, I'm listening. Scott was too nervous to speak, and Stiles began stuttering and scratching the back of his head. She focused on Jacob. It seems these 2 idiots don't want to tell me. You speak. Tell me what's going on. All right, Jacob said. Have you watched movies with werewolves, vampires, and other supernatural creatures? Melissa nodded slowly. Yes, I have. So, what are you trying to tell me? Suddenly, Stiles blurted out. Werewolves are real. Melissa looked at him and raised a brow. What? Stiles stood up and almost shouted. Werewolves are real, and Scott is a werewolf. Very subtle, Stiles. Jacob said dryly. Stiles sat back down, embarrassed. I'm sorry I panicked. Melissa looked between them, skeptical. Are you 3 making fun of me? No, Jacob said calmly. Although he jumped the gun, what he said is the truth. Werewolves and other supernatural creatures from mythology are real. And magic is real, too. You're joking, right? Melissa asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. No. Look, Jacob held out his hand. A ball of fire appeared in his palm, then morphed into a small bird that flew around the room several times before vanishing. Melissa's eyes went wide, and she stared in stunned silence. She then turned to Scott, her voice a whisper. Scott, are you really a werewolf? Scott nodded, his expression pained. Yes, I didn't choose to be. I was bitten a month ago when I was in the woods with Stiles and Jacob. The werewolf who bit me was the man who came to pick you up for a date. His real name is Peter Hale, and he's definitely not a medical rep. He's a crazy alpha werewolf. Melissa didn't seem to care about Peter. She was more concerned about Scott. So what now? Are you going to lose control and hurt people on the full moon? No, I'm not like the werewolves in the movies. I can control myself. Jacob taught me how. And you are my anchor. What's an anchor? Melissa asked, looking at Jacob for explanation. An anchor to a werewolf is a person, emotion, or memory that the werewolf focuses on to maintain control. By concentrating on this anchor, they are reminded of their humanity, which helps them resist their violent impulses and control their transformation, especially during a full moon. And you are Scott's anchor, which means he loves you very much. Jacob explained. Melissa smiled softly, then she asked, Are all werewolves like Scott? I mean, do they all have control? They all can learn to control themselves, but it's not easy for everyone. Jacob said, and of course there are psychos who can control themselves but choose not to and give in to the beast. She nodded, then looked directly at Scott. Show me. Scott hesitated, then finally shifted. His eyes glowed yellow. Fur grew on the sides of his cheeks, his fangs elongated, and his claws emerged. Melissa was shocked at first. Then, she moved beside him, touching his fur and looking into his eyes. She gently opened his mouth to look at his fangs, then took his hand to examine his claws. Fascinating, she said. She looked at him, her expression a mix of wonder and concern. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Scott shifted back to normal. Because I was afraid you would think I'm a monster and hate me. Never, Melissa said, pulling him into a hug. I would never hate you. Jacob said. You guys tell her everything else about the supernatural world. And Scott, your boss is a druid. Ask him to help you set a mountain ash barrier around your house. Maybe buy some bear spray and ask him to add wolfsbane to it. And give it to Melissa for protection. Wait, how did you know he's a druid? Scott asked. Jacob said, I felt it when I met him tonight. He probably already knows what you are, so you can trust him. Then he stood up and said, All right, see you guys tomorrow? No, not tomorrow. I'll be out of town and probably won't be back until Sunday. Leaving town, Stiles asked. Yeah, me and the girls are going on a trip. Jacob said, You didn't tell me what you are yet. Melissa pointed out, You're definitely different from Scott. Werewolves can't use fire magic. Maybe another time. Jacob said. He then kissed her on the cheek, which made Scott's eyes glow as he let out a low growl. Jacob just smiled and said, Good night, Melissa. Melissa smiled back. Good night, Jacob. Good night, man. Scott grumbled. Jacob ignored Scott and started walking out of the room, calling over his shoulder. Good night, Melissa. See you soon. Scott jumped up and began pushing Jacob toward the door. No, you will not see her soon. And hopefully never. Scott opened a door, shoved Jacob out, and slammed it shut behind him. Jacob shook his head with a smirk. Rude. He then got into his car and drove away. Scott came back to the living room, and Melissa looked at him disapprovingly. That was rude, Scott. Scott sat down heavily. No, it wasn't. You should never see him again. He's very dangerous to women. What is he? Melissa asked. We don't know. Stiles admitted. He won't tell us. He said he's something people would do anything to get their hands on, and us knowing would put us in danger. But we know he's very strong. He can use fire and lightning magic, and he probably has some kind of charm ability to attract women. Yes, exactly, Scott agreed. So stay away from him. And by the way, do you feel anything toward him? Melissa smiled thoughtfully. He's handsome, and if he were older, I wouldn't mind dating him. But unfortunately, he's not. And I do feel he's charming. The magical, unexplainable type of charm. I caught myself staring at him absent-mindedly a few times tonight. But he's not charming to the point that I can't control myself or anything like that. Okay, that doesn't sound too good, Scott said, his worry evident. Please, just stay away from him. Don't worry about Jacob, Scott. Melissa reassured him. He's too young for me. Stiles smirked. For now. Scott growled at him, and Stiles raised his hands in surrender. Okay, I'll shut up. Melissa laughed. All right, boys. Now, tell me everything you know about the supernatural. Jacob arrived back home and found Allison watching TV while stroking the fur of a deeply sleeping Malia, who was curled up beside her. Jacob kissed Allison and whispered, not wanting to wake Malia. Where's Lydia? She went back to her house. Allison whispered back. She said since we're leaving for Vegas tomorrow, she wanted to spend the night with her mom. I see. Jacob said. Where have you been? Allison asked. I was at Scott's house. Did you have dinner yet? No. We were waiting for you. Just then, Cogman called them for dinner. After gently waking Malia, the three of them went to the kitchen to eat. Afterward, they went upstairs to Jacob's bedroom. Allison and Jacob slipped into the bathroom, where they had some fun before joining Malia in the large bed, where the three of them soon fell asleep. The next morning, Jacob woke before Allison. He watched as the sunlight traced a path across the sheets, eventually warming her shoulders. She stirred, then her eyes fluttered open, meeting his gaze with a sleep-softened smile. Morning, she said, stretching. Morning, love. Jacob replied with a grin, kissing her forehead before getting up. Come on, let's grab breakfast before Lydia eats everything. Did she come back from her mom's? Allison asked. Yeah, she's already in the kitchen with Malia. They went downstairs and found Lydia and Malia already at the dining table. Malia was sitting by Lydia's chair, her tail wagging lazily as Lydia fed her bits of bacon. Good morning, Lydia greeted cheerfully. We were just about to start without you. Good morning, Jacob said, kissing her before sitting down. Allison patted Malia's head. Morning, Malia. The coyote barked softly in response. As they ate, Jacob thought. System sign-in. Daily sign-in successful. Rewards obtained. Mr. Ping's secret ingredient noodle soup x 50 bowls. Kung Fu Panda. A Game Boy Advance SP AGS 101. A black leather bomber jacket. Jacob smiled faintly. Not bad. The noodles look good. I wonder how they taste. I should try them later. As for the Game Boy, I had one before and loved playing Mega Man on it. Maybe I'll play with it later. After checking the rewards, Jacob looked at Cogman and said, Cogman, bring the masks. Cogman nodded and went to the guest house, returning with a sleek black case. He opened it to reveal several silver, paper-thin masks that shimmered faintly like liquid metal. These are nano masks, Cogman explained. They can mimic anyone's face. You can control them through your phones. I already installed the app for that before I gave them to you. Jacob picked up a band made of the same nanotechnology. What's this for? That's a nano-vocal band. Cogman said, you wear it around your neck, and it will become fully disguised as your skin. I wouldn't bore your little reptilian brain with the details of how advanced the technology one used in it, sir, as I doubt you would understand any of it. But all you need to know is that the band can change your voice and mimic other people's voices. Microscopic speakers are embedded in the mouth and jawline area of the mask to project the newly synthesized voice. Jacob smiled as he played with the band. I'm too happy with these toys. You made to be angry that you just called me stupid. He then looked at the girls. We're going to Vegas in disguise. Cogman will change his appearance, too. Lydia raised an eyebrow. Why do we need disguises? Jacob put his mask and vocal band on, then took out his phone and changed his face to the Joker's. White paint appeared on his skin, complete with an ugly, smile-like scar. Even his hair turned green as the nanoparticles mixed with it, changing its color. With a crazy smile, he stood up and came face-to-face with Lydia, licking his lips. In the Joker's voice, he said, because it's all part of the plan. Lydia pushed his forehead away. You stay away from me. The face you chose is ugly. Jacob inhaled sharply as if offended. He placed a hand over his heart. That's rude. I'm not ugly. He licked his lips and kept shaking his head, muttering, I'm not. I am not. Allison let out a snort of laughter, quickly stifling it behind her hand. Jacob's attention snapped to her for a moment, and he gave her a nod with a smile, acknowledging the appreciative audience, before his focus returned to Lydia. He leaned in so close their noses almost touched, touching her cheek with his hand, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, gravelly whisper. Do you want to know how I got these scars? He said. Lydia, thoroughly unamused, rolled her eyes. You got them because you just disguised yourself as the Joker. The energy vanished from his posture. The performance was over. He slumped back into his seat and said, You're boring, Lydia. You should have played along. Allison stopped laughing and said, All right, be serious, Jay. Why do we need to disguise ourselves? Jacob took the mask off. We're going to cause chaos and destroy that auction, so I'd rather no one know who we are. Cogman added, He is right to be cautious, Lady Allison. The people behind the auction have connections to the government, to legal and illegal organizations, and to hunter families, witches, wizards, and all kinds of supernatural people. Lydia nodded. Then we should be careful and not let anyone know who we are. I don't want our lives to become chaotic with all kinds of people coming to Beacon Hills looking for us and trying to kill us. Allison sighed. You're right. That will be troublesome. She looked at Cogman. Make sure no cameras or recordings trace us back. Cogman gave a courteous bow. Don't worry about that, my lady. I will take care of it. Jacob said, All right, girls. Take your masks and put them in your rings. Go get ready. We should hit the road. Both Lydia and Allison nodded, took the masks, and went upstairs. Jacob looked at Malia. We can't take you with us since you're still stuck in your coyote form, so you look after the house. Malia whined softly. Jacob patted her head. We'll only be away for 2 days. I'll leave the TV on for you, and I'll leave some cooked sea king meat in the fridge. We'll bring you all kinds of food back, I promise. He gave Cogman some sea king meat. Cook this for her and leave it in the fridge. Then Jacob went to his room, took a shower, changed his clothes, and waited for the girls in the gazebo while playing with his new Game Boy. After an hour, Lydia and Allison finally came out of the house. Jacob joined them, giving them a look. What? Allison said. We got ready as fast as we could. Jacob raised his hands innocently. I didn't say anything. You didn't say anything, but you're giving us a look. Lydia retorted. On second thought, Allison, I think our hair and makeup still need some touches. Allison smiled. You're right. Let's go back inside. Jacob panicked and caught both their arms, dragging them toward a silver Mercedes-Benz G550 parked in front of the mansion. No. No one is going back inside. Cogman opened the doors, and Jacob shoved a laughing Allison inside. Then he got in and pulled Lydia in after him. Cogman, let's go. Since when do we have this car? Lydia asked. This is Cogman's transformed body. Jacob explained. We can't use the Rolls-Royce. It's traceable. I see, Lydia said. She cranked the window down and called to Malia, who was watching from the door. Bye, Malia. Jacob leaned over. Don't go back to the woods. It's dangerous. Wait until I come back, and I'll go with you if you want to stroll in the woods. Malia barked and went inside, closing the door behind her. With that, they left Beacon Hills and drove to Vegas. 10 hours later, they were driving through the neon-lit streets of Las Vegas. Lydia leaned forward, her eyes shining as they passed glittering casinos and crowded sidewalks. This is going to be fun. Jacob smiled. Indeed. But first, let's put the masks on. Cogman, change your face too. The girls put their masks on, and Lydia started looking through the faces in the app. What face should I choose? Choose a face that looks over 21. Jacob instructed. And don't choose a celebrity. Just pick something random. They all chose random faces, and Cogman helped them check into their hotel, a luxurious suite at Caesar's Palace. After a quick bite, they went to see the Mystere show at Treasure Island. Saturday morning was spent in the serene, underwater world of the Shark Reef Aquarium. That afternoon, after lunch, Allison and Lydia dragged a reluctant Jacob on a shopping spree. In the evening, with a little time to spare, they watched the elegant dance of the Bellagio fountains. But as the night deepened, Jacob's demeanor shifted. All right, he said, his voice low. It's almost time for the auction to start. Let's get Lydia back to the hotel. No, Lydia insisted, turning to face him. Take me with you, please. I promise I'm ready. I want to help the people who are being held captive and sold there. Jacob studied her face. Are you sure? Lydia nodded, her expression resolute. I am. I can't say that I will kill anyone, but I will at the very least protect myself. I promise. All right, you can come with us. Jacob agreed. Now, let's find someplace to change our appearance again. They went to the bathrooms of a busy casino. The girls changed their clothes and faces again in the women's bathroom, putting on black suits. In the men's bathroom, Jacob tapped his phone, and the nanomask shimmered across his face, reshaping his features into those of the Joker. Cogman changed his face into that of a bald man with a goatee. Jacob looked at him and smirked. Oh, you're going as Heisenberg. I love it. I should call you Walter for the rest of the night. Let's go meet up with the girls. Jacob and Cogman waited for 15 minutes before the girls joined them outside. You girls look gorgeous in those suits, Jacob said, his voice now carrying a dark, playful tone that matched his new face. We're definitely doing some role play when we get back home. Allison teased. Do you like our suits or our new faces? Jacob shook his head. I like you girls, the real you in suits. I don't care about your fake faces. Lydia looked at Cogman, but didn't recognize his face, which was Walter White's face. You look scary. Do you have to choose a scary old man's face every time you change your appearance? I think I look good, my lady. Cogman replied. No, you look like you're up to no good. Lydia said. But aren't we up to no good tonight, Lady Lydia? Cogman countered. All right, Jacob said, slipping on a purple coat. We're going to be late. Let's go. The four of them got into a limousine Cogman had rented online while they were changing. They drove to the edge of the city, to the building where the auction was being held. The limousine pulled up to a 6-story building on the desolate edge of the city. Before they stepped out, Jacob turned to the girls. All right, we need aliases. I'll be Jack, and Cogman is Walter. What about you two? I'll be Jean, Allison said. It's the middle name of the maid of Gavaudin. Lydia followed suit. And I'll be Ariel. Jean and Ariel it is, Jacob said with a nod. He then took 2 normal senza beans from his pocket dimension and gave them to Allison and Lydia. These are senza beans. Eat one only if you're seriously injured and near death. They can heal any injury and restore a person's physical condition to its peak instantly. Use them wisely. I only have 2. If you only have 2, then what about you? Allison asked. I don't need them, Jacob said. Now put them away, and let's go. Lydia and Allison stored the beans in their rings, and the group exited the car. They approached a heavy steel door guarded by 2 large men in black suits. One stepped forward, his expression professionally blank. He didn't even blink at Jacob's grotesque disguise. In this auction, anonymity was the norm. Invitation, the guard stated flatly. Jacob, slipping perfectly into the Joker's manic persona, produced one of the 3 invitation cards he possessed, this one taken from the wizard. He smiled, a wide, unsettling grin that made the guards tense. Here you go, my friend, Jacob said, his voice a playful, gravelly drawl. But tell me, do you want to see a magic trick? The 2 guards exchanged a wary glance. The one who had spoken took a subtle step back. No, sir, we don't want to see a magic trick. He gestured for his partner to open the door, adding under his breath. I've seen what the Joker does to people when he shows them his tricks. Jacob's shoulders slumped in theatrical disappointment. Fine, it's your loss, anyway. He leaned in, his smile widening. But don't worry, I promise I'll show you a magic trick on my way out. With that chilling promise hanging in the air, they were ushered inside. A silent attendant guided them into the main auction hall. It wasn't a venue with private rooms, but a single, vast space on the first floor, arranged like a high-end restaurant. Round tables draped in white linen were set around a central stage. 20 tables filled the room, though only 12 were occupied. Jacob's group was led to a table for 4. As they sat, he immediately noticed the couple at the next table. Their scent was a potent cocktail of anxiety and fear. The man kept adjusting his tie, and the woman's hands trembled slightly in her lap. Around the room, other attendees hid their identities behind elegant masks, heavy hoods, or oversized sunglasses. Jacob and his group decided not to take action immediately, choosing instead to watch and see just how evil humans could be. As they settled, waiters began serving food to each table, elegant plates of steak, roasted vegetables, and other delicacies. Jacob's group didn't touch theirs. He heard the nervous woman from the next table whisper to her companion, "Should we eat?" To blend in. The man, looking relieved for a distraction, nodded. Sure. He picked up his fork and was about to cut into the steak. Jacob smirked, not turning his head. In the Joker's voice, he said casually, "I wouldn't eat that if I were you." He paused for dramatic effect, then slowly turned his horrifying smile toward them. "Unless you like human flesh, of course." He turned back to face the stage, leaving the couple frozen in horror. The man's fork clattered loudly onto his plate, and the woman let out a stifled gasp, her face turning a sickly pale. Many of the other attendees, possessing supernatural hearing, had overheard. Some smiled knowingly, while others glanced warily at the nervous couple before turning their attention back to their own plates. A few minutes later, the lights dimmed, focusing all attention on the stage. A man and a woman, dressed in impeccably tailored evening wear, stood at the center. "Ladies and gentlemen," the man began, his voice smooth and commanding. "Welcome. We are so pleased you could join us for this evening's auction. Let us begin." The auction started calmly. The first items were rare, magical herbs, potions, and preserved organs from normal humans and lesser supernatural creatures. Next came artifacts, a dagger that never lost its edge, a mirror that showed a person's greatest fear. The attendees participated with raised paddles, their voices calm and measured, though most refrained from bidding, seemingly uninterested in these initial items. The auction continued its descent into hell. Vials of werewolf blood, a still-beating vampire heart, and a pair of live, terrified teenage were-jaguar twins clinging to each other in a reinforced cage were paraded across the stage. Beautiful shapeshifters and normal humans were sold for purposes the auctioneers only hinted at with vile euphemisms. The room was a gallery of horrors, and the attendees were eager collectors, their paddles rising one after another to claim their prizes. Jacob felt Lydia stiffen beside him. He placed a calming hand on her arm, his gaze fixed forward, an evil smirk plastered on his disguised face. He spoke to both girls telepathically. "Don't worry, we will save them, and the evil people behind this auction won't live past tonight." The man and woman at the next table were now even more nervous and scared. They had been shocked when the auction began, with items like organs and other body parts said to belong to supernatural creatures. But when they saw the glowing eyes of the shapeshifters inside the cages, they were truly frightened. Jacob glanced at them, then simply shook his head and ignored them. Then came the main attraction. A cage was wheeled onto the stage, containing a terrified young woman with faintly glowing eyes. "A fledgling villa," the female auctioneer announced, as if describing a piece of art. For those who don't know, a villa is a shapeshifter with charming abilities. She can enchant men and influence their minds. She can also transform into a bird-like being with a beaked head and scaly wings. A wonderful item for collectors who appreciate beautiful creatures. And, of course, she can be used for experiments and potions as well. "Do we start the bidding at 1 million? The crowd went wild, bidding one after another until the price soared to 6 million. After a few more less remarkable items were auctioned, Jacob had seen enough. He spoke to Lydia telepathically. "Lydia, look at the couple on the other side of the room, the ones wearing wolf masks. I want you to tell me the first thing that pops into your head when you look at them. Don't overthink it." Lydia glanced at them and said telepathically, "Anger, hatred, anxiety, and desperation. I don't think they're bad people." Jacob nodded. "All right, it's time to act." He spoke to both Lydia and Allison telepathically. "And don't kill the two idiots next to us. They're just normal humans, probably cops who got in over their heads. As for the two with the wolf masks, since Lydia thinks they're not bad, I'll read their memories to confirm before we decide what to do with them." Allison said, her mental voice tense. "The three people with no masks near the stage are a wizard and two witches. I saw them in the memories you showed us from the wizard you fought. You should be careful when dealing with them." "I know," Jacob responded, his mental tone cold and focused. "I'll kill them before they can cast a spell, and I won't make the same mistake again and touch a wizard with my bare hands." Jacob stood up and began clapping slowly. "What a wonderfully evil show I just witnessed." He started walking toward the stage. The male auctioneer's voice was tense. "Please return to your seat, sir." Jacob ignored him and continued walking. The man's eyes glowed red, and he growled, "Sir, if you don't go back to your seat, I will have to make you leave." Jacob stepped onto the stage. "Do you want to see a magic trick?" The man growled, "No, get back to your seat or leave." A military-grade knife appeared in Jacob's hand from his pocket dimension. He addressed the crowd. "How about you guys? Do you want to see this knife disappear?" A man in gothic clothes, sipping red wine, smiled. "I do love a magic trick. Go on, clown. Show us your trick." "All right," Jacob said. "Watch closely." The auctioneer tried to grab Jacob, but Jacob dodged by dropping into a crouch. He planted the handle of the dagger firmly into the wooden stage. When the auctioneer lunged for him again, Jacob caught his arm, yanked him down with blinding speed, grabbed the back of his head, and slammed his face directly onto the upright blade. The knife stabbed clean through the auctioneer's skull. Jacob stood up and bowed to the crowd. A few people even clapped for him. Lydia sighed. "He's taking his Joker role a little too seriously. Should we join him, my ladies?" Cogman asked. "Not yet." Allison said, "Let him have his fun first." Jacob turned to the female auctioneer with a smirk. "Now it's your turn." The woman wasn't scared. "I don't know who you are or what you think you're doing, but you are not leaving this building alive. I promise you that. You crazy bastard." Jacob licked his lips. "I'm not crazy or a bastard. I'm not. I am not." He felt movement behind him and turned to find the man he had just stabbed standing up, the knife still lodged in his face. Jacob wasn't surprised. The man was a shapeshifter, and his glowing red eyes meant he is an alpha. Jacob smirked. "How did you like my magic trick?" The man growled. "You're dead." He ripped the knife from his face and threw it aside. Then he shifted, growing taller as his suit tore apart. Brown fur sprouted all over his body until he stood as a 3-meter-tall werebear. He swung a massive paw at Jacob, but Jacob caught it with ease, shocking both the werebear and the crowd. Jacob looked at the audience. "Now, let me show you another trick. I will saw this bear in half. Watch." He used his earth element, and with a wave of his hand, a stone table materialized behind the werebear. The creature struggled to free its paw from Jacob's iron grip, but couldn't. Jacob then channeled electricity through his hand, shocking the werebear until it nearly lost consciousness, twitching violently with smoke pouring from its mouth. Quickly, Jacob lifted the massive form onto the stone table. He used his earth element again, causing 2 rock boxes to form around the upper and lower halves of the werebear's body, leaving its head, feet, and a small section in the middle exposed. The katana, shuswei, appeared in his hand. Jacob coated the blade with crackling electricity and swung. The sword cut clean through the werebear, slicing him in 2 at the waist. Jacob bowed to the crowd once more. "What do you think of my trick this time? Look, he's still alive, even though I cut him in half." Blood pooled on the stage, and the bisected werebear vomited blood before shifting back to human form and dying. The crowd was now visibly concerned, starting to fear for their own safety. No one clapped this time. Jacob looked out at them. "You guys didn't like my trick?" He glanced at the dead man and scratched his head, muttering, "Is it because he died that they didn't like it?" He turned back to the crowd with an evil smile. "How about one of you volunteers? I promise I'll cut you in half without killing you." He scanned the room. "How about it? Anyone want to volunteer? Raise your hands." When no one responded, Jacob looked back at the female auctioneer, who was staring in a daze. "No one wants to volunteer, so I guess we'll have to make do with you." The woman snapped back to reality and tried to flee, but Jacob caught her. He inserted his claws into the back of her neck, reading her memories. What he saw filled him with such fury that he stopped playing. With a sharp twist, he broke her neck, killing her instantly. He turned to Allison, Lydia, and Cogman, his voice cold and decisive. "Walter Jean, except for the 2 people next to our table and the 2 with the wolf masks. Kill everyone else." Most of the people attending the auction were supernatural. When they heard Jacob's command to kill them all, they immediately rose to their feet. Glowing eyes of various hues, red, yellow, white, blue, fixed on Jacob on the stage, while others watched Cogman and the girls with predatory vigilance. A man near the back stood, holding his hands up. "I don't know what grudge you have at the auction house, but I want no part of it. I'm leaving." Jacob simply stomped his foot. With a deafening rumble, thick walls of solid earth erupted from the floor, slamming shut over every exit and sealing the room like a tomb. "Sorry, buddy," Jacob said, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. "None of you are leaving here alive." The wizard and 2 witches near the stage didn't say anything. They looked at each other, and with a nod, they stood as one. Their hands were already weaving intricate patterns in the air, lips moving in a guttural chant. But Jacob didn't give them a chance to finish their spells. He coated his entire body with lightning, and in the blink of an eye, he vanished from the stage and reappeared amidst them. A silver blur, shuswei, his katana, coated with lightning, cut through the air once, twice, 3 times. The spells died on their lips as 3 heads tumbled to the floor, their bodies slumping a moment later. The smell of ozone, blood, and burnt flesh filled the air. The man in Gothic clothes, realizing Jacob was the greater threat, made a calculated decision. He became a blur of motion, his speed carrying him not toward Jacob, but straight for Lydia, the seemingly vulnerable one. But Lydia, who was paying close attention and focusing so she wouldn't be a burden to Jacob and Allison, was ready. She raised a hand, and a shimmering, semi-transparent energy shield materialized around her an instant before impact. The man slammed face first into the energy barrier with a sickening crunch. The sound of his nose shattering was audible as the rebound sent him flying backward through the air, disoriented and stunned. Before his body could hit the ground, Jacob was there. He met him midair, shoe sway held in a two-handed grip. The blade fell in a vertical arc, cleaving the man cleanly from head to crotch. The two halves of the man landed with a wet thud, but to Jacob's mild interest, they continued to writhe. Jacob looked down at the twitching halves, noting the dark veins around the man's eyes and his sharp fangs. A vampire, huh? He took a bank card from the vampire and said, "Let's see if you can survive this." He waved a hand dismissively, and a torrent of fire erupted from his palm, engulfing the two halves and incinerating the vampire, leaving only a pile of ash that scattered across the floor. There were still 30 people in the room, excluding the 4 Jacob had decided not to kill. 10 of them were normal human hunters, now desperately looking for cover. "Walter, Jean," Jacob commanded, his voice cutting through the panic. "Make quick work of them." The room erupted into chaos. Cogman moved with mechanical precision. He approached a table where 2 Wendigos were beginning their transformation, their mouths filled with sharp, jagged yellow teeth, their eyes glowing white as they hissed at him. Cogman sighed and said, "I wish I had more time to play with you, but unfortunately, I don't." His hands shot out with impossible speed, fingers like steel talons. There was a wet, tearing sound as he plunged his hands into their chests and ripped out their still-beating hearts, crushing them in his fists before the creatures could even scream. Allison, her eyes glowing a fierce green, raised her hands. Dozens of razor-sharp arrows made of condensed wind materialized in the air around her. With a flick of her wrists, they shot forward with a sound like 100 arrows being loosed at once. The group of unarmed hunters, caught in the open, had no defense. The wind arrows pierced their bodies with brutal efficiency, dropping them to the floor in puddles of blood and ending their lives. Lydia felt a wave of nausea, her stomach churning at the violence. But then she remembered the terrified Vila, the helpless caged women, the caged teenage were jaguar twins, and the jars of preserved organs. Her resolve hardened. She took a deep, steadying breath and stepped into the fray. She walked purposefully toward a beta werewolf with glowing blue eyes who was charging her with a snarl. She didn't flinch. Opening her mouth, she released a concussive wave of sound that hit him like a physical battering ram, lifting him off his feet and sending him crashing into the far wall. Before he could shake off the daze and rise, she was upon him. She focused, and this time released a tightly controlled, high-pitched frequency directly at his head. The werewolf clutched his ears, a scream dying in his throat as blood began to trickle from his eyes, nose, and ears. His skull vibrated violently until, with a final, sickening pop, it exploded, painting the wall behind him. Lydia turned away, swallowing hard, but steadied herself and moved toward her next opponent. Jacob was a whirlwind of destruction. He moved through the remaining shapeshifters, a blur of elemental fury. He burned one in a pillar of fire, electrocuted another until he convulsed into a charred husk, and impaled a third on a spike of rock that erupted from the floor. Then he cut 7 other shifters to pieces with his katana. Allison, having cleared the hunters, engaged 3 more shapeshifters. She dodged a claw swipe and retaliated with a scything blade of wind that cut one in half at the waist. She peppered another with wind arrows, and with a final, sharp gesture, summoned a vortex that lifted the third and slammed him into the ceiling with bone-shattering force before cutting him in half with a wind slash. Cogman, meanwhile, finished his gruesome work. His forearms shifted, revealing the muzzles of integrated laser guns. With 4 precise, humming bursts of blue light, He drilled neat, smoldering holes through the heads of the final 4 targets. They dropped to the floor before they even knew what hit them. Jacob collected his military knife from the stage and put it away in his pocket dimension, then turned his attention to the couple with the wolf masks, who shrank back as he approached. "Tell me why you're here." His tone was flat and final. A demand, not a question. "You didn't bid on anything, and I could smell your anger and anxiety the moment I entered this room." The man stepped forward, placing his body as a shield in front of the woman. "We're werewolves from a small town near Phoenix." He confessed, his voice strained. "We're here for our daughter. She was kidnapped, and all the leads pointed to this place." "Let me read your memories." Jacob stated flatly. "I will only confirm the truth of what you just said. I won't pry into anything else." The man hesitated for a heartbeat, then gave a stiff nod. Jacob's claws extended and gently pressed against the back of the man's neck. A flood of images and emotions washed over him. A girl's laughter, a frantic search, a desperate, aching hope. He withdrew his claws. "You're telling the truth," Jacob said. "You have nothing to fear from us. We came here to destroy this place. And your daughter is here, in the basement. She was scheduled to be sold next week. I saw her in the auctioneer's memories." The woman let out a choked sob, her hands flying to her mouth. "Really? Is she safe?" "She's in a cage, but she appears unharmed." Jacob reassured her. "Thank you." The woman whispered, tears streaming down her face. She gripped her husband's arm. "George, let's go. We have to save our baby girl." "Wait," Jacob commanded, holding up a hand. "There are people outside the walls I made. They're trying to get in. If I weren't constantly reinforcing the walls with my magic, they'd already be inside. They're probably armed with all kinds of weapons, including wolfsbane." The woman's face fell. "Then what should we do?" "Wait until Walter collects all the bank cards," Jacob instructed. "Then we'll deal with the threat outside and help you rescue your daughter." His gaze then shifted to the other couple, who were huddled together. "And you? I assume you're cops." The man, still visibly shaking, managed to find his voice. "We're FBI agents. We were following a human trafficking case. We caught a suspect with an invitation to this place and came to investigate." Jacob smirked. "By your scent, I can tell you found more than you were looking for, huh?" "Our scent?" the female agent asked, bewildered. "You reek of fear and anxiety." Jacob clarified. "I'm assuming you had no idea the supernatural was real." The man gave a shaky nod. "Yeah, we had no clue we were walking into a freak show. Welcome to the real world," Jacob said dryly. Just then, Cogman returned, holding a stack of bank cards. He handed them to Jacob. "Sir, please keep these safe until we return. I'm afraid I might lose them in the upcoming fight." Jacob took the cards and stored them in his pocket dimension. "All right," he said, his voice taking on a commander's tone. "Jean, Ariel, and Walter, you 3 will head to the basement and rescue the prisoners." "What about you?" Allison asked, her concern evident. "I'm going upstairs to deal with the rest of the people in this building," Jacob stated, his gaze turning toward the ceiling as if he could see through the floors. "This place is just a branch. The organization behind it holds auctions in many other states. The ones in charge here are a man and 2 women. I don't know what they are, only that the word bear was terrified of them, according to the auctioneer's memories." "Then be careful," Lydia said. "You guys too," Jacob said, "because one of the women is guarding the basement. Let me show you." He closed his eyes, and a moment later, the memories of the auctioneer flooded into the minds of Allison and Lydia. They saw it all: the sterile, blood-stained concrete of the basement, the cold iron bars of overcrowded cages, the hollow eyes of captives waiting to be sold like livestock or dismembered for parts. They saw children of all ages huddled in fear, and they witnessed, through the auctioneer's cold gaze, the brutal butchering of supernatural beings that had been going on for years. A wave of pure, incandescent rage washed over Allison and Lydia. Allison's hands clenched into fists, her knuckles white. Jack, she corrected herself, her voice trembling with fury. "We have to destroy this place." Jacob gave a grim, single nod. "You guys just deal with that woman in the basement as quickly as possible. Rescue the people in the cages. then get them out. I will burn this place to its foundations." "All right," Allison nodded. Jacob then turned to the two FBI agents. "What about you? What are you going to do?" The male agent straightened his shoulders, a flicker of professional duty overcoming his fear. "We'll help." "You can't help," Jacob said bluntly. "But you can go with them to the basement. Try not to get in the way. But first, let's go to the backstage and release the people who were brought up here to be sold tonight." With that, they moved to the backstage area, sealed by one of Jacob's earth walls. Upon entering, they found 6 nervous employees there. Cogman didn't give them a chance to say a word. He moved through them like a phantom, his movements a blur of lethal precision. There were brief, choked cries and the sickening sound of snapping bones, and then silence. They then proceeded to unlock the cages that were made of iron mixed with mountain ash. The first to emerge was the beautiful Vila, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. She was followed by 6 other women, 4 shapeshifters of various kinds, and 2 normal humans, and the 2 teenage were-jaguar twins. Then they helped them open their chains and the shocking collars around their necks. As the prisoners were freed, the air in the room changed. Relief was quickly overshadowed by a smoldering, collective rage. They had been treated as objects, and now they wanted vengeance. One of the shapeshifters, a woman with sharp features and a predator's grace, stepped forward. "Can I join you?" she asked Jacob, her voice a low growl. "I want to help you fight the monsters who run this place." Jacob looked over the group, seeing the same fiery resolve in every pair of eyes, even the 2 normal women who stood tall despite their fear. "Sure," he said. "Anyone who wants to fight can go to the basement with Jean's group. Help them kill the guards while they deal with the woman guarding the basement." Without another word, the newly freed victims formed a grim, determined procession behind Allison and Lydia. Before leaving, Jacob collected the artifacts from the auction. He stored the dagger that never lost its edge in his pocket dimension. Then he picked up the mirror that showed a person's greatest fear. Against his better judgment, he looked into it. The glass swirled, and a horrifyingly vivid image formed. Allison and Lydia, lying broken and lifeless in a pool of blood. A cold dread gripped his heart. He cursed under his breath and, without a second thought, unleashed a jet of fire from his palm, reducing the evil mirror to a pile of molten slag and ash. Lydia, seeing his reaction, asked, "What did you see?" Jacob shook his head, his face pale. "I shouldn't have looked into the stupid evil thing. And I'm not telling you what I saw. It was a nightmare." He turned sharply toward the main exit, where his earth wall still stood. "All right, let's go." They gathered before the solid wall of rock. "Listen up," Jacob announced. "After I open this door, Walter and I will come out first to eliminate the hostiles waiting outside. The rest of you, be careful not to get shot. They're likely armed with all kinds of firearms, flashbangs, and wolfsbane grenades." With a gesture, the earth wall dissolved into dust. Immediately, a hailstorm of gunfire erupted from the hallway, accompanied by tear gas, grenades, and blinding flashbangs. Jacob simply waved a hand, and a massive fire snake erupted from his palm. It surged forward, its maw wide open, swallowing the tear gas, grenades, and flashbangs, and continued its advance, forcing the panicked guards to scatter and dive for cover. In that moment of chaos, Jacob and Cogman became blurs of motion, streaking out of the auction room and into the hallway. The hunt was on. The 20 guards, trained and well-armed, were utterly outmatched. They were hunted down in the corridors, cut down by Jacob's katana, or having their hearts ripped out by Cogman. None survived. On the 6th floor, in an office, a strikingly beautiful woman named Elena sat stroking a massive albino python coiled around her shoulders. A faint frown marred her perfect features as she picked up a radio. "John, report. Did you find out what is happening in the auction room yet?" From a surveillance room on the 4th floor, a frantic voice replied. "No, ma'am. Someone has completely taken over the building's security system. The cameras are down, the elevators are locked, and I can't even open the damn door to get out of the surveillance room. It's sealed shut, but I sent Carl and 19 guards to check the 1st floor." Elena's voice turned to ice. You will regain control of the building's security system, John, or you will not live to see the morning. She didn't wait for a reply, cutting the channel and switching to Carl's frequency. Carl, report. What is the situation? Instead of Carl's voice, a distorted, manic laugh echoed from the radio, a sound that was pure chaos. Elena shot up from her chair, the python hissing in agitation. You are not Carl. Who are you? The voice replied with chilling glee. I'm the monster that monsters like you fear, and I'm coming for you, bitch. Ah-ha-ha-ha. The radio call ended, leaving only static and the echo of Jacob's maniacal laughter. Elena bit her perfectly manicured nail, a sign of anxiety. She quickly took her phone and made a call. A deep, calm male voice answered. Elena? What's going on? Dmitri, get back here now. She hissed. We're under attack by someone extremely dangerous. He's already killed 20 of our guards and probably everyone in the auction room. You know what that means? Most of the participants were powerful shapeshifters, and there was a vampire, a wizard, and 2 witches there tonight. There was a brief pause on the other end before Dmitri responded, his voice now sharp and serious. All right, love, I'm on my way. In the blood-spattered hallway outside the auction room, Jacob turned to Lydia and Allison, his expression serious. Okay, head to the basement and deal with that woman. He instructed, be careful, attack her from distance, and don't let her get close. Always remember to use your energy shields and leave the building as soon as you've freed the prisoners. He then shifted his gaze to Cogman. Keep an eye on them. Don't get so lost in the fun of maiming people that you let them get hurt. I won't let them come to harm, sir. Cogman assured him. Jacob gave a nod. All right, I'm going up. See you outside. He turned to leave, but Allison's voice stopped him. Wait, can you give me the katana? I think it will complement my wind attacks. Sure, Jacob said without hesitation, handing her Shusway. He then looked at Lydia. How about you? Do you need a weapon? Give me your bracelet, Lydia requested. Jacob removed the alien energy blaster from his wrist and handed it over. You can control it with your mind. Lydia wore the bracelet on her wrist. A moment of concentration was all it took for her to feel the psychic connection with it. With a thought, it morphed into a dangerous-looking blaster, then seamlessly shifted back to its bracelet form. Thanks, she said. I'll give it back when we're done. Give it to Walter afterward. Jacob said, see if he can replicate it or make something similar for you and Jean. All right, time to go. Allison said, her grip tightening on Shusue's hilt. Jack, be careful. You too, Jacob replied, before walking toward the stairs leading to the upper floors. The group accompanying Allison and Lydia armed themselves with rifles and sidearms taken from the dead guards. Cogman then led them to the elevator, activated it, and they descended into the depths of the building. As the elevator descended, Allison and Lydia activated their energy shields. With a synchronized effort, they combined them, forming a larger, stronger dome of shimmering energy that enveloped the entire group, just as the elevator slowed to a halt. The moment the doors slid open, a storm of gunfire erupted from the dimly lit basement hallway, hammering against the energy barrier in a futile, deafening cacophony. Dozens of rounds flattened against the shield and dropped harmlessly to the floor like metallic rain. The armed members of their group didn't need an order. They stepped forward from behind the protective dome and returned fire with brutal efficiency, killing the surprised guards in a short, sharp exchange. When the gunfire ceased, only one figure remained standing at the far end of the hallway. She was an Asian woman with cold, glowing red eyes. Behind her, 6 spider legs sprouted from her back, the very limb she had used to effortlessly deflect the bullets meant for her. Allison studied the woman warily. Old man, what is she? Cogman's analytical voice cut through the tension. She is a spider shapeshifter. The possibilities include an arachne, an anansi, Tsuchigumo, or a Jorigumo. Given her ethnicity, she is most likely either a Tsuchigumo or a Jorigumo. The woman didn't wait for further analysis. She moved with shocking speed, lunging forward to strike the energy barrier with her sharpened spider legs. The impact was immense, a powerful thrum resonating through the shield. But the barrier held firm. The rebound sent her skidding backward, but she instantly recovered, shooting a thick strand of white silk from her mouth to anchor herself to the ceiling, where she hung upside down, staring at them with predatory intensity. "Who are you people?" she hissed. Cogman said, "My ladies, do you have a mirror with you?" "I have one," Lydia said. "Why?" "Look at that woman's reflection and tell me what you see," Cogman instructed. Both Lydia and Allison retrieved small mirrors from their spatial rings and angled them toward the inverted woman. In the glass, her beautiful human form was gone, replaced by the horrifying visage of a giant, hairy spider with glowing red eyes. "What did you see?" Cogman asked. "I saw a giant spider with red eyes," Lydia reported, her voice steady. "Me too," Allison confirmed, snapping her compact mirror shut. "Then she is a Jorigomo," Cogman declared. "A cannibalistic creature, a spider shapeshifter from Japan. She seduces men, binds them with her silk, and devours them. She is also known as the horse spider. Her abilities include producing strong, sticky silk, a hypnotic voice that can mesmerize men, deadly venom, and control over other spiders. Her reflection will always reveal her true, monstrous nature." "Okay," Allison said, her resolve hardening. "Walter, you keep watch from his side. Let me and Ariel deal with the whore. Don't interfere unless it's necessary." She then looked at the werewolf couple. "You guys deal with any remaining guards in this basement and release the prisoners." George gave a grim nod. "We will." Allison unsheathed Shusway, the blade singing as it left the scabbard, which she then stored in her spatial ring. "Ariel," she said, her voice calm and focused. "Are you ready?" Lydia willed her energy blaster to activate. Yes. They deactivated the energy shield and stepped forward to face the Spider-Woman. Seeing them deactivate the shield, the Jorigomo attacked with blinding speed. But Allison was ready. With a fluid, powerful swing of Shusway, she unleashed a crescent-shaped wind slash that screamed through the air. The Spider-Woman leaped to avoid it, but she wasn't fast enough. The slash cleanly severed two of her spider legs, which clattered to the floor, twitching. But the victory was short-lived. The Jorigomo jumped away from Allison, and within seconds, the severed limbs twitched and began to regenerate from the stumps. Enraged, the Jorigomo opened her mouth, not to speak, but to spray a jet of murky, green venom. Allison and Lydia reopened their energy shields. The corrosive liquid splashed against their combined shield, sizzling and smoking as it tried to eat through the barrier. "Disgusting," Allison muttered. She waved her free hand, and a powerful gust of wind swept the poison away, splattering it against the walls, which began to corrode. Then, with a series of precise flicks of Shusway, she sent multiple, smaller wind slashes slicing through the air. The Spider-Woman twisted and tried to avoid the attacks, but she couldn't avoid them all. She shrieked in pain and fury as the wind slashes hit her, opening deep, bleeding wounds on her body. Yet, even as she bled, the wounds began to close. Realizing she was at a disadvantage in her hybrid form, she decided to stop holding back. With a sickening crunch of shifting bones, her body expanded, transforming fully into a monstrous giant spider, nearly filling the width of the hallway. She now ignored the smaller wind slashes, which bounced off her hardened carapace without causing any real damage. One of her giant, spear-like legs slammed into their combined energy shield. The impact was colossal, sending visible shockwaves through the barrier and forcing both girls a step back from the sheer force. But the shield, strained and shimmering violently, held firm. "She's too strong in this form," Lydia yelled, her voice strained as another thunderous blow from a spider leg made their combined shield flicker. "Indeed," Allison agreed, her mind racing. "Ariel, keep her busy. I need a minute to concentrate." Lydia gave a sharp nod, her eyes narrowing with focus. As the Jorigomo gathered herself for another charge, Lydia opened her mouth and unleashed a concussive sonic scream. The visible wave of sound hit the massive creature square in her chest, stopping her advance dead and sending her rolling backward until she slammed against the far wall. "How do you like my voice, you ugly overgrown pest?" Lydia taunted, firing a searing blue bolt from her energy blaster that scorched a deep, black furrow across the Jorgomo's back. Enraged, the creature stood with a furious chittering sound, unleashed a thick, sticky net of silk. Lydia simply teleported, the net landing harmlessly where she'd just been standing. She reappeared on the spider's flank and let loose another deafening scream, sending the monster crashing into the wall once more. This dangerous dance continued. Lydia would disorient the beast with her screams, scorch the spider with her blaster, and teleport away before the spider could retaliate. While she couldn't inflict lasting damage due to the creature's hard carapace and rapid regeneration, she expertly held her attention, carefully avoiding her venomous sprays and silk traps. While Lydia played her lethal game of tag, Allison closed her eyes, raising her hands. The stagnant basement air began to hum, then whine, as she gathered every gust and breeze in the stagnant basement. A vortex of emerald energy swirled into existence between her palms, spinning faster and faster as it formed a massive, 2-meter-long wind arrow. With immense effort, Allison compressed it further, squeezing the chaotic energy down into a dense, lethally focused projectile less than half a meter long. It glowed with a terrifying, barely contained power, humming like a hornet's nest. "Ariel, get behind me now," Allison shouted. Lydia didn't hesitate. She teleported behind Allison in an instant. Allison thrust her hands forward. The compressed wind arrow vanished from sight. It crossed the distance in a blink, far too fast for the Jorgomo's heightened senses to track. The moment the arrow was unleashed, both girls reactivated and combined their energy shields into a reinforced dome around themselves. The arrow struck the giant spider directly between its cluster of glistening red eyes. There was a wet, punching sound as it pierced straight through the hardened carapace and buried itself deep within the creature's body. The moment it was inside, Allison made a sharp, clenching motion with her fist. The arrow detonated. The massively compressed wind energy was released, expanding with the force of a bomb inside the Jorgomo's body. There was a horrific, wet, tearing sound, and then the creature simply came apart. Her body was shredded from the inside out, chunks of internal organs and fragment of the spider's body blown in all directions, splattering against the energy shield with a series of sickening thuds. The fight was over, but the explosion didn't stop there. The concussive force ripped a massive crater in the concrete floor and the wall behind where the spider had stood. A deep, web-like crack shot up through the ceiling with a sound like rolling thunder. The entire building gave a violent, groaning shudder, and a rain of dust, and chunks of concrete poured down from above. "Are you trying to kill us?" Lydia shrieked, ducking instinctively as a large piece of ceiling smashed against their shield. Allison, feeling the building tremble and seeing the cracks spreading across the ceiling like lightning, scratched the back of her head sheepishly. "I didn't even use my full strength. I was trying not to bring the whole place down." Lydia grabbed Allison by the collar, her eyes wide with a mixture of fury and panic. "You call this holding back? I swear, you and that idiot husband of yours are trying to get me killed." Allison rolled her eyes, prying Lydia's hands off. "He's your husband too. I didn't try to kill you, I just miscalculated my strength a little." "A little?" Lydia's voice hit a hysterical pitch. "That's exactly what he said before his lightning storm tried to barbecue me. Now, this death trap is going to be our tomb. Then we better not be in it when it falls." Allison shot back. Just then, Jacob's voice cut through their argument, echoing in their minds. "Girls, what was that explosion? The whole building is trembling. Are you okay?" Allison answered telepathically. "We're fine. We already dealt with that woman. She was a Jorigumo, a spider shapeshifter. And I'm the one who caused the explosion. You need to leave the building now." Jacob's thought was urgent. "All right, we're leaving now," Allison confirmed. She turned to Lydia, who was still glaring daggers at her. "Stop looking at me like that. And let's get out of here before your prediction comes true. Just then, George and his group emerged from a side corridor, leading a stream of dazed and frightened prisoners. George himself had a gash on his forehead that was already knitting closed, while several others nursed bleeding wounds from falling debris. "What happened to you guys?" Allison asked, feigning innocence. "Did the guards do that?" George wiped blood from his eye. "It was the shock wave from the explosion. It threw us into the walls like rag dolls, and the ceiling started coming down on us." "What was that explosion, anyway?" Allison looked away, her cheeks flushing slightly. That was the Spider-Woman. She, exploded. Violently. She clapped her hands together, changing the subject. "Anyway, let's get out of here." Lydia folded her arms and gave Allison a profoundly unamused look. Allison responded by sticking her tongue out, then grabbing Lydia's arm and dragging her towards the elevator. "Walter, let's go." Cogman followed, and luckily, the elevator was still operational, though it groaned ominously under the strain. Once everyone had reached the first floor, they fled the shuddering building, not stopping until they were safely hidden in the shadowy alley behind a warehouse a block away. Allison reached out with her mind. "Jay, we're out. Hurry up and finish so you can follow us." "I'll be out soon," Jacob replied. "I already cleared the second through 5th floors. There were only about 30 hostiles total, with only 5 beta werewolves posing any challenge. I'm heading to the 6th floor now to deal with the woman and man in charge." "Be careful," Allison urged. "Don't play with them. Use your full strength from start." "All right. I'll see you soon." Lydia looked at Allison, her expression having softened from anger to weary concern. "Did you tell him we're out?" "Yeah," Allison said, turning to face the group. "He's dealing with the leaders on the top floor. He'll be out soon." George, who was tightly hugging his wife and newly rescued daughter, looked up with genuine concern. "Aren't you worried about him fighting those people alone? Should we go back to help him?" Lydia let out a short, humorless laugh, her gaze fixed on the cracked and groaning building in the distance. "He doesn't need our help. If we go back in there, we'll just be liabilities he has to protect." She met George's eyes. "The best thing we can do for him now is stay out of the way and let him handle those monsters." Jacob emerged onto the 6th floor, having left a trail of carnage from the 2nd floor up. The moment he stepped from the stairwell into the hallway, a storm of gunfire erupted. Bullets ricocheted off him, tearing his suit but flattening against the impenetrable dragon scales beneath. He kept walking straight toward the shooters, his laughter a low, maniacal chuckle, echoing unervingly over the gunfire. He drew his S&W 500 revolver and, with 6 precise shots, dropped 6 guards. He stored the gun back in his pocket dimension, then aimed his index fingers like pistols. Crackling bolts of blue lightning shot from his fingertips, sizzling through the air and striking down the remaining guards, piercing their skulls and killing them before they hit the ground. Silence returned. A single figure remained, a burly woman standing like a sentinel in front of a heavy office door, her glowing red eyes glaring at him with hatred. Jacob walked up to her. "Are you the alpha of those idiots I killed on the 5th floor?" The woman didn't answer with words. Instead, a guttural growl rumbled from her throat as she shifted. Her head distorted into a grotesque, dog-like visage, and black fur sprouted across her body. She grew taller, her form becoming hunched as her arms lengthened into claw-tipped limbs. Jacob looked her up and down with open disgust. "Gross. What kind of werewolf or were-dog are you? You creepy bitch." The creature lunged, slashing at him with her claws. Jacob caught one arm, then the other, his grip like iron. Enraged, she snapped her fang maw at his face. Jacob leaned back, planted a foot on her chest, and held her at bay. "Disgusting," he muttered, watching her drool drip as she snapped her jaws impotently like a rabid animal. With a brutal twist, he snapped both of her arms at the elbows. A sickening crunch echoed in the hall. He then kicked her to the ground, and before she could recover, he spat a glob of molten lava directly onto her head. A sizzling hiss filled the air as the woman's skull melted away in a cloud of smoke. He stepped over the smoldering corpse, muttering as he approached the door. Creepy bitch. She's even uglier than Peter's alpha form. He reached the door and kicked it open, the frame splintering under the force. Inside the lavish office, a beautiful blonde woman, Elena, sat behind a mahogany desk, looking at him with wide eyes. The albino python coiled around her shoulders hissed in terror, sliding down to cower in a corner. Jacob raised a brow, thinking, "So, this is Elena. I saw her in the auctioneer's memories, but she's even more stunning in person." The moment he entered, a primal fear gripped Elena. Jacob smiled, a cold, predatory expression, and walked over. He sat on the edge of the desk, directly in front of her, reached out, and gently traced her cheek with his clawed finger. "Why does a beautiful woman like you have to be so evil?" Elena flinched, shaking off the paralyzing fear, and slapped his hand away. "You can't just touch a woman's face like that, you know?" Jacob's smile widened. "My bad. I couldn't help myself." "Who are you?" she demanded. "And why are you attacking us?" "I'm the Joker. Can't you see?" he said, gesturing to his face. "By the way, do you want to know how I got these scars?" He traced the grotesque smile etched into his nanomask. Elena said, "No, I want to know your real identity," and Jacob cut her off. His clawed hand shot out, cupping her face. When she tried to pull away, his other hand caught her by the throat, his grip firm but not crushing. "Stop squirming and look at me." Elena stopped struggling. A slow, confident smile spread across her lips. "As you wish." Her eyes began to glow with a sinister red light as she locked her gaze with his. Jacob seemed unconcerned. "I had a beautiful wife once, just like you," he began, his voice taking on a storytelling tone. "But she was so jealous. One day, she saw me talking and laughing with another woman." He traced his claw along her jawline, leaning in so close she could feel his breath. "And when I got home, she gave me Canema venom, paralyzing me. Then she took a knife." He paused, his eyes boring into hers. "And she said, 'If you're going to smile at another woman, I'll give you a smile nobody will ever forget.' Then she stuck the blade in my face and gave me these scars." He let out a soft, crazy chuckle. "The funny thing is, she couldn't stand the sight of me after putting a permanent smile on my face." Just then, Jacob felt a strange stiffness in the hand holding Elena's neck. He let go and tried to clench his fist, but his fingers were frozen, the skin beginning to take on a dull, gray, stone-like texture. Elena laughed triumphantly, scrambling back from the desk. "Finally!" I was scared there for a second. "I thought my ability wasn't working on you. It seems it's just affecting you slower for some reason." Jacob looked from his petrifying hand to Elena. Her skin had turned deathly pale, and her beautiful blonde hair had transformed into a writhing nest of hissing snakes. "I see," Jacob said, his voice calm despite his predicament. "You're a Gorgon. It's too late for you to realize that now." She sneered. "You were dead the moment you locked eyes with me." Jacob didn't panic. I was careless, but in a burst of speed, his good hand shot out and seized her by the throat again. "If I kill you, the petrification stops, right?" Elena's triumphant expression shattered into panic, but it was too late. Jacob released a surge of electricity directly into her body. She convulsed violently, her snake hair writhing in agony, before she slumped into unconsciousness. He quickly inserted his claws into the back of her neck, sifting through her memories at a frantic pace. By the time he was done, the stone-like stiffness was creeping up his legs, and his first arm was almost fully petrified. He opened his mouth and unleashed a concentrated blast of dragon fire, reducing the Gorgon to a pile of ash in an instant. The moment she died, the magical hold on his body broke. The petrified stone of his hand and arm cracked and flaked away, revealing healthy scales and flesh beneath. Jacob clenched his newly restored fist. "That was scary. I almost died." He let out a shaky breath. "Let's not tell Allison and Lydia about this. They'd probably kill me themselves." A smirk returned to his face. "Now, let's get the money and wait for that guy Dimitri to come back." He walked to a bookcase lining the wall and pulled on a specific, fake book. With a soft click, a hidden door swung open within the wall. There was no lock. Elena and her partner had been arrogantly confident that no one would be stupid enough to steal from them. Jacob entered the hidden room and let out a low whistle. Stacks of cash were neatly arranged on shelves. From Elena's memories, he knew it totaled around $160 million. He swiftly stored every last bill into his pocket dimension. His eyes then fell on the other items, various vials and bottles filled with preserved organs and blood from different supernatural creatures, alongside an assortment of potions. From the memories he'd absorbed from Elena, he knew their effects. Some strengthened supernatural beings, others healed, and a few restored magical energy. Jacob only took one thing, a small box containing 12 vials of magic recovery potions, which were crafted from magical herbs. He left the rest, his stomach turning at the thought of consuming something made from the body parts of another sentient being. I've drunk dragon blood potions from the system before, he thought, but this feels different. This is just creepy. I can't drink a potion made from the organs of another person, supernatural or not. With a wave of his hand, he summoned a jet of fire, incinerating the grotesque collection of potions and organs. He exited the room and thought, too bad there are no other artifacts. They only had the two we already took, the cursed mirror and that dagger. With the loot secured and everyone in the building dealt with, there was no more reason for the structure to stand. Jacob made his way back down to the first floor and strode out the front entrance. He stopped about 20 meters away, turning back to face the 6-story structure that housed so much suffering. He raised a single hand. The air around him began to warp and shimmer with intense heat. A sphere of hot fire materialized above his palm, growing rapidly until it was a massive 5 meters in diameter, its surface churning with contained devastation. Jacob focused, his brow furrowing slightly as he willed the sphere to compress. It shrank, the energy within becoming denser and more volatile, until it was no larger than a basketball. With a flick of his wrist, he sent the sphere shooting toward the building. It passed through the front door. The moment it reached the center, Jacob made a sharp, clenching motion with his fist. Then he activated his energy shield. The sphere detonated. There was no sound at first, only a flash of light so bright it bleached the color from the night. Then a deep, earth-shaking thump was followed by a roar as stone, steel, and glass vaporized in a wave of burning heat. The force shot upward and out, eating the building from the inside. The structure didn't just fall. It came completely apart, crushing inward before being swallowed by a tower of fire that reached for the sky. As suddenly as it started, the fire faded, leaving behind only a smoking, melted pit filled with broken rubble. Jacob found a large, scorched chunk of concrete, sat down, and waited. He didn't have to wait long. A black sedan screeched to a halt near the ruins, and a powerfully built man, Dmitri, leaped out. His eyes frantically scanned the devastation before they locked onto the clown-like figure sitting calmly amidst the chaos. He stormed over, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Clown, where is Elena?" Jacob smiled. "I turned her to ash," he said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "It was a shame, really. She was a beautiful woman. Such a waste." A bestial roar of pure agony and rage tore from Dimitri's throat. His eyes blazed a furious red. "I'll kill you." He moved in a blur, crossing the distance in an instant, and swung his fist toward Jacob's head. Jacob's own hand came up with casual precision, catching the fist squarely in his palm. The impact created a visible shockwave that rippled outwards, kicking up a perfect ring of dust and debris from the ground around them. The concrete slab Jacob was sitting on cracked violently under the transferred force. But Jacob hadn't moved an inch. He slowly raised an eyebrow, his golden eyes gleaming with predatory interest. "You are strong," Jacob mused, his voice a mix of genuine surprise and dark amusement. He tightened his grip on Dimitri's fist, the bones in the larger man's hand audibly creaking under the pressure. A wide, eager smirk spread across his face. "I hope you can last long enough for me to enjoy our fight." "You are strong," Jacob mused, his voice a mix of genuine surprise and dark amusement. He tightened his grip on Dimitri's fist, the bones in the larger man's hand audibly creaking under the pressure. A wide, eager smirk spread across his face. "I hope you can last long enough for me to enjoy our fight." Then he released Dimitri's fist. Dimitri roared and swung again, faster this time. His blows came in a wild flurry, each punch heavy enough to crush stone, but Jacob dodged them all with effortless precision. He moved like smoke, sidestepping, weaving, and parrying without losing his grin. Jacob dodged a punch and slammed his elbow into Dimitri's chest. The crack of breaking ribs was unmistakable, and the larger man was sent crashing into the asphalt. Dimitri groaned, spitting blood as he struggled to his feet. But before he could even set his stance, Jacob blurred forward using his super speed and drove a fist deep into his chest. The force lifted Dimitri off his feet, sending him flying backward as if yanked by a wire. He crashed into a pile of scorched rebar and concrete with a sickening crunch of metal and bone. Jacob smirked. "Is that all you've got?" From the rubble, a guttural, inhuman sound emerged. Dimitri rose, his body beginning to grotesquely reconfigure. Muscles bulged, bones snapped and shifted, and black fur erupted across his skin. His chest expanded, his shoulders broadening as his head distorted into the shape of a massive bull. He grew to a towering 2.5 meters, his legs transforming into powerful, cloven-hoofed limbs, a thick tail lashing behind him. Two curved horns burst from his skull, and his eyes glowed red. Jacob raised a brow, clearly intrigued. Finally decided to shift. "I've been wanting to see your minotaur form since I read Elena's memories." Dimitri snorted, hot vapor puffing from its nostrils into the cool night air. Then he charged. The very ground trembled, asphalt cracking under its hooves. Jacob braced, crossing his arms in front of him. This time, the impact was different. A grunt was forced from his lips as the Minotaur's fist connected, his boots skidding backward several inches through the rubble. Jacob smirked. "Now we're talking." With a powerful heave, he shoved the Minotaur back. Seizing the opening, he launched into the air, spun to build momentum, and delivered a devastating kick to the center of the beast's chest. The crack of impact echoed through the ruins. Dimitri stumbled back, bellowing in pain, before toppling on his back. As Dimitri roared in fury and struggled to its hooves, Jacob's eyes fell on the tattered remains of his suit jacket. He strolled over, plucked a black bank card from the inside pocket, and put it into his pocket dimension. Wouldn't want this getting lost. There's a lot of money on it, according to Elena's memories. The casual theft was the final insult. Dimitri let out a roar that shredded the air and charged again, consumed by a rage that overrode all sense of self-preservation. Jacob smirked and met his charge. The real fight began. It was a brutal, direct contest of power. Their blows collided with thunderous cracks, shockwaves rippling outward as they traded hit for hit. Jacob dodged a swing of the Minotaur's tree trunk-like arm and drove his own fist into the Minotaur's ribs, feeling another satisfying crack. Dimitri retaliated by dropping to all fours, using the tremendous strength in his legs to launch himself forward, aiming to gore Jacob on his horns. Jacob caught both horns in his hands, his boots sliding backward from the force before he dug in and halted the charge. He smirked and drove a powerful knee directly into the Minotaur's snout. Dimitri roared in pain and swung a huge fist wildly. Jacob simply let go of the horns, his smirk never fading. The fight continued, but Jacob was undeniably stronger and faster, a predator playing with his food. He let Dimitri wear himself out, blocking and countering with precise, bone-shattering strikes. The Minotaur's blind rage was his undoing. The turning point came when Jacob sidestepped a blind charge and hammered a fist into the side of the Minotaur's head. The force was immense, and with a sound like splitting timber, one of Dimitri's horns broke off at the root. Dimitri screamed, a horrifying mix of human agony and bestial bellows. He staggered away, clutching his head. Warm blood began to mat the fur around his temple. The blinding rage cleared from his red eyes, replaced by dawning, primal fear. He looked at the smirking clown and realized the horrifying truth. The clown was toying with him. If he stayed, he would die. Spinning on his hooves, Dmitri turned and fled toward the glowing lights of the city. Jacob picked up the severed horn, hefting its weight before tossing it aside. He smiled at the fleeing Minotaur's back. "Hey, come back here. I thought we were having fun." He began to follow, not with a sprint, but with a predator's leisurely stalk. He allowed Dmitri to gain a little distance, to let the glorious, fleeting hope of escape take root. Then, in a blur of motion, Jacob would reappear to deliver a bone-jarring blow that sent the Minotaur crashing into a dumpster or through a chain-link fence. Dmitri would stagger to his feet, disoriented and bleeding, and run again. And Jacob would follow. They repeated this deadly game. Hit, fall, run, hit again, until they burst from a ruined alleyway onto a crowded city street. Cars screeched to a halt. Pedestrians froze, staring in disbelief at the bleeding, horned monstrosity that had stumbled into the middle of the street. Then all eyes turned to the clown-faced man who emerged from the same alley, smirking and walking calmly toward the beast. For a moment, a stunned silence hung in the air, broken only by the constant hum of traffic and distant casino music. Then the whispers started. Phones were raised. A man pointed a shaking finger at Jacob and said, "It's the Joker. They must be filming a Batman movie." Another scoffed. "Really? I don't see any cameras." Three brave, or foolish, girls skipped over to Jacob. "Can we take a picture with you?" one asked. Jacob flashed them a smile. "Sure." He threw his arms around two of them. Posing as their friend, snapped the photos before they scurried away, giggling hysterically. Jacob's eyes scanned the crowd of tourists, gamblers, and revelers. An idea bloomed in his mind. Since we are in Vegas, he thought, his smirk widening, let's give these people a show. With a ground-shaking roar, Dmitri grabbed a parked sedan and hurled it at Jacob. Jacob didn't even flinch. He inhaled deeply and unleashed a stream of searing dragon fire. The car exploded mid-air, a fireball lighting up the street as molten metal rained down like fiery confetti. The crowd, now thinking this was the greatest street performance they'd ever seen, erupted in cheers. A woman nudged her boyfriend. "The CGI is amazing." "Are you stupid?" he retorted. "That's not CGI. That's a real car. Do you even know what CGI means?" "My car," a man wailed from the sidewalk. Enraged, Dmitri picked up another SUV and sent it flying toward Jacob. This time, Jacob simply kicked the vehicle, sending it rocketing back toward the Minotaur faster than it had come. It slammed into his chest, flattening him against the wall of a casino. Dmitri freed himself with a bellow of pure fury, tearing a lamppost from the concrete and swinging it like a colossal club. Jacob caught the blow with one arm, sparks flying where the metal met his scaled forearm. He twisted, wrenched the post from Dmitri's grasp, and used it like a bat to smash Dmitri across the jaw. As the Minotaur staggered, dazed, Jacob seized his remaining horn and delivered 3 brutal punches to his head before releasing him and delivering a final kick that sent him crashing hard into a building. A few drunk tourists stumbled out of a nearby bar just in time to see the monster embedded in the crumbling wall. "Yo, bro," one of them laughed, stumbling forward with his phone. "That costume is sick. Is this like a movie shoot or something?" The man walked right up to Dmitri's motionless body and raised his phone for a selfie. The Minotaur stirred, blood dripping from his mouth, and his glowing red eyes snapped open. Jacob saw it and cursed. Damn it, it's too late to save him now. The drunk man barely had time to scream. Dmitri's hand shot out, grabbing him by the torso, and with a sickening tear, he ripped the man clean in half. The 2 pieces of the corpse hit the ground with a wet thud, blood splattering across the sidewalk. Jacob sighed. That guy was unfortunate. The drunk man's friends and the entire watching crowd froze. The illusion shattered. This was no movie shoot. This was a nightmare. A single, piercing scream cut through the air, and then the street erupted into chaos. People scattered in all directions, trampling over one another in a blind panic. Cars swerved and crashed into each other, Some drivers abandoned their vehicles entirely and fled on foot. Jacob's grin faded in thought. Well, that escalated quickly. These people are going to need some serious therapy after tonight. In the distance, sirens wailed. Police cruisers screeched to a halt, blocking both ends of the street. Officers leapt out, guns drawn, shouting for everyone to get down. They took one look at the monstrous Minotaur and opened fire on him and Jacob. Bullets tore through the air. They ricocheted off Jacob harmlessly, flattening against the scales hidden beneath his clothes. But Dmitri wasn't so lucky. Rounds punched through his thick hide, drawing fresh streams of blood and fueling his rage. Enraged and in pain, the Minotaur turned toward the nearest group of officers. He charged, his one remaining horn lowered like a spear, ready to gore and trample them. But Jacob was suddenly there, an immovable wall between the raging beast and the terrified cops. "All right," he said, his voice dropping to a cold, deadly calm. "I can't let you kill anyone else. Time to end this." He inhaled, and the air around him shimmered with intense heat. Then his mouth opened, and he unleashed his dragon's breath. The cone of hot flame engulfed Dmitri completely. The Minotaur's agonized roar was cut short as the inferno consumed him. Flesh and fur vaporized. Bones blackened and crumbled to ash. In moments, nothing was left but a sizzling, molten scar on the asphalt where the beast had stood. Jacob exhaled softly, a wisp of steam curling from his lips as he turned to face the police officers behind him. The officers panicked. One of them, a woman with wide, terrified eyes, raised her service weapon and fired. The bullet ricocheted off Jacob's chest with a sharp ping. He smiled, a cold, unsettling expression. "That's rude. I just saved your lives." He stepped closer. He gently touched her chin with a clawed finger, forcing her to meet his glowing golden eyes. "By the way," he murmured, "do you want to know how I got these scars on my face?" The gun clattered to the pavement as the officer began to tremble uncontrollably. Just then, Jacob heard Allison's voice in his head. "Stop molesting the poor woman, and let's go. It's time we left Vegas, especially after the shit you just pulled, you idiot." Jacob let go of the woman and replied telepathically. "What did I do this time? You could have killed that bull guy in front of the auction building." Allison shot back. That way, that man who got torn apart would still be alive, and this chaos wouldn't have happened. Jacob shrugged. "That's not my fault. Who told that guy to try and take a selfie with a Minotaur? I mean, couldn't he see it was a real monster?" Jacob used his super speed and vanished from the street. The cops spun around, searching in vain for the clown who had simply disappeared. Jacob reappeared in a shadowy alley where Allison was waiting. He kissed her and said, "Where's Lydia and Cogman?" "They're still near the auction ruins with the people we saved from the auction." She replied, "Let's go get them and leave." Jacob said, "They used their super speed, becoming blurs as they raced back to the outskirts of the city where Lydia, Cogman, and the freed captives were gathered." When they arrived, Jacob looked over the huddled group of freed captives. After a brief internal struggle, he sighed dramatically. "You should all know that what I'm about to do is really going to hurt me." Everyone except Allison, Lydia, and Cogman visibly panicked, shrinking back. Lydia raised a brow. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to give them some money," Jacob said. He reached into his pocket dimension and withdrew stacks of cash totaling $30 million. "George," he said, addressing the alpha werewolf, "you take $2 million for yourself and your family. Except for the 2 FBI agents, give the rest $1 million each." He handed the massive sum to George, who began distributing it. After the money was handed out, Jacob clapped his hands together. "All right, time for us to go. You guys should leave this city as soon as possible and lay low. The people behind the auction house are seriously scary, with connections everywhere. Make sure you don't get caught again." He then turned to the 2 FBI agents. "One of you, give me your phone. I'll write down 3 addresses for auctions like this one here in the States. Take them to your superiors and tell them what you saw. But they'll probably tell you to forget everything that happened tonight." The female agent handed her phone to Jacob without hesitation. "They probably will," she said. "But if they allow us to go after those auctions, I'll do everything in my power to destroy them. Jacob finished typing and handed the phone back. Don't go after those people if you want to live long. As humans, you stand no chance against them. He showed her his hand, where fine, reptilian scales glinted in the light. And don't bother trying to get my fingerprints to find out who I am. I have no prints. The female agent offered a small, respectful smile. I wouldn't do that even if you left prints. She deliberately wiped the phone on her sleeve. See? I have no intention of knowing who you are. You're a good person, and in the scary world we just learned about tonight, we need people like you. She pocketed the phone and added, and as for us being weak humans, George is going to fix that. Allison looked at the alpha werewolf. Are you going to give them the bite? Did you tell them the risks? I did, George said firmly. They still insisted. I will teach them how to control themselves. Then good luck, Jacob said. Now, it's definitely time for us to leave. With that, Jacob, Lydia, Allison, and Cogman departed. They slipped into a dark alley, and after Cogman confirmed no cameras were present, their nanomasks shimmered, shifting their appearances to the random faces they had used upon arriving in Vegas. They melted into the crowds on the street, returned to their hotel, checked out, and began the long drive back to Beacon Hills. In the car, Allison turned to Jacob. By the way, what was the woman you fought on the 6th floor? Jacob kept his eyes on the road. She was a Gorgon. Lydia said. A Gorgon? Was she dangerous? Nope, not at all. Jacob said a little too quickly. I dealt with her with ease. Allison narrowed her eyes, her gaze piercing. Why do I feel like you're lying? I'm not lying. She was weak, he said, clearing his throat. Anyways, this trip was fun, and now we're so rich. I still have $130 million in cash in my pocket dimension, and we'll see how much is on the bank cards after Cogman makes all the money ours. Allison asked, do you think what you did tonight will be on the news tomorrow? I mean, you fighting a minotaur in front of all those people. Probably not. Jacob mused. The higher-ups in the government wouldn't let that happen. They wouldn't want the supernatural world exposed and cause a panic among normal humans. Anyway, we'll see what happens tomorrow. After driving almost all night, Jacob, Allison, Lydia, and Cogman finally arrived back in Beacon Hills. The digital clock on the dashboard read 4:07 a.m. as the car rolled to a stop in front of the mansion. The night was still and quiet, save for the faint chirping of crickets. Malia, who had heard the car, was already waiting for them near the entrance. When Jacob stepped out, she ran toward him, circling him happily before rubbing her head against his leg. Jacob smiled, crouching down to pat her head. Hey, Malia. Missed us. She nodded and gave a small bark in reply. The group headed inside. The mansion felt comforting after everything that had happened in Vegas. Jacob handed all the bank cards to Cogman before heading upstairs with the girls. Allison and Lydia went straight to their rooms to shower, while Jacob retreated to his. Malia followed him, trotting close behind, and jumped onto his bed as if claiming it for herself. He took a shower, and by the time he came out, Malia was already curled up and fast asleep. He lay down beside her, gently stroking her fur. A few minutes later, Allison and Lydia, freshly showered, came into his room. Seeing Malia asleep and Jacob already half asleep, they exchanged a smile and quietly slipped under the covers. The four of them slept soundly until morning. Jacob didn't wake up until almost 11 a.m. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, warming the bed. He blinked the sleep from his eyes and noticed that Malia was gone, but Allison and Lydia were still sleeping, hugging him from both sides. He carefully freed himself from their arms, moving slowly so as not to wake them, and headed downstairs. Malia was on the couch in the living room, watching an animal documentary on TV. Jacob sat beside her. Hey, he said softly, did you go to the woods while we were gone? She shook her head. Jacob smiled. Good girl. Malia snorted and ignored him, turning her attention back to the TV. He reached into his pocket dimension and pulled out several snacks he'd picked up for her in Vegas. Malia perked up immediately, her tail wagging. He grabbed some chips for himself, and the two ate together in comfortable silence. System sign-in, Jacob thought. Daily sign-in successful. Rewards obtained. Isteth's bath water, 20 liters. Akame GA kill. Paddington's marmalade, 30 jars, Paddington. A pair of socks. Jacob read the rewards and sighed. System, I like girls, not their bath water or dirty underwear. Stop giving me these perverted rewards. I should get rid of that water again. He took a jar of marmalade and some crackers from his pocket dimension and tasted it. Not bad, he thought. I should put a few jars in the kitchen. Just then, Cogman entered the living room from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. Sir, breakfast is ready. Jacob said, wait until the girls wake up. We'll eat together. Cogman nodded. Very well, sir. Jacob leaned back on the couch. By the way, how much was on those bank cards? A total of $1.15 billion, sir. Cogman said. Most of it came from Dimitri's account. Jacob's eyes widened slightly. How much was on Dimitri's card? 800 million. Cogman replied smoothly. Jacob let out a low whistle and grinned. Those bastards from the auction were loaded. According to Elena's memories, that was just what the Vegas branch made in 2 months. I can't imagine how much the people behind the auction make from all their branches in the States and overseas. Cogman tilted his head thoughtfully. Should we open our own auction house, sir? We could sell only bad people. Poachers, murderers. Jacob shot him a sharp glare. No, I'm not running a slave market. I have no problem killing bad people, but I will never sell them. Cogman shrugged. I was merely suggesting, sir. Jacob rubbed his temples. Don't ever suggest something like that again. Anyway, did you manage to transfer the money to our accounts? Not yet, sir. Today is Sunday. The banks won't process transactions until tomorrow. While I could hack them today, I prefer to do it during business hours. It's much easier that way. Fine, Jacob said. Once it's done, transfer 20 million to my personal card and 5 million each to Allison and Lydia. You can invest the rest or start a company, like we talked about before. As you wish, sir. Cogman paused. And sir, when is our next scheduled outing to, maim and kill people? Jacob sighed. Cogman, stop thinking about killing all the time. Go do something useful. Grow our wealth, cook something, or buy yourself a female robot if that'll keep you busy. I'm not a pervert like you, sir. I find no pleasure in such things. Cogman said. And growing our wealth is trivial. I could add billions to your account today, if you wished. But breaking bones, crushing skulls, tearing out hearts, now that's satisfying. I love squeezing the life out of. Jacob groaned. Stop, you psychopathic murderbot. Go tend the garden or something. You're ruining my good mood. Cogman opened his mouth to reply, but Jacob raised a hand. No more talking. Go. Grumbling, Cogman turned and stomped toward the garden. Jacob sighed and leaned back on the couch. Malia, who had been watching silently the whole time, tilted her head. Jacob smiled and reached over, running his hand through her fur. Don't worry, he only kills bad people. Malia gave a soft whimper and rested her head on Jacob's thigh. He smiled faintly and went back to watching TV with her. After half an hour, Allison and Lydia finally came downstairs, both looking half asleep. Morning, Allison said, rubbing her eyes. Morning, Jacob replied with a grin. Sleep well. Lydia yawned. Like a rock. I didn't realize how tired I was. I didn't even have nightmares about killing people yesterday. Jacob said, I told you you'd get used to it. Besides, you can't call those monsters we killed yesterday people. Where's Cogman? Allison asked. He's sulking in the garden. Jacob said, what did he do this time? The usual. He was talking about killing and maiming people, so I sent him out. But he already made breakfast. Let's eat. They went to the kitchen and ate together, but Malia didn't follow. She was full from the snacks Jacob had given her. While eating, Jacob said, by the way, girls, guess how much money we earned from our little trip yesterday? Lydia said, 100 million? Maybe 200. Jacob smiled. How about you, Allison? How much do you think we got? Allison thought for a moment. It must be 400 million or more. Those monsters held auctions every week, and the people buying must have been rich too. Jacob grinned. It's $1.15 billion. Lydia's eyes went wide. What? That much? Yep. Jacob confirmed. I told Cogman to transfer 5 million to each of the cards I gave you. Lydia hugged him. You're the best. I'm going to buy a nice car, something that suits a queen like me. Jacob kissed her. You could buy whatever you want. If you need more money, you just have to ask. He then looked at Allison. What about you? What do you want to buy? Allison smiled. I don't want anything in particular, so maybe I'll buy a car, too. A Ferrari or something like that. But are we going to be in trouble if we use that money? Don't worry about that. Jacob assured her. Cogman will take care of it and make it legally ours. After breakfast, they moved back to the living room, where Malia was still glued to the TV, watching her favorite wildlife show. Lydia looked at her. You really love watching animals kill each other, don't you? She picked up the remote. Can I switch the channel? Malia let out a low growl. Lydia chuckled. Okay, chill. I just want to see if what we did yesterday made the news. Then I'll switch back to your murder show. She changed to a news channel. The screen instantly filled with chaos. Footage of the Vegas skyline, a massive explosion, and a shaky phone recording of the auction building collapsing into a crater. The news anchor's voice was grave. Authorities are still investigating the massive explosion that rocked the Las Vegas Strip last night. Officials suspect terrorism or gang violence, though no group has claimed responsibility. Then the footage switched to another angle, one taken from a street. The camera caught a figure dressed like the Joker breathing fire and fighting a massive, bull-like monster under the flickering city lights. Jacob complained. Those bastards are making me look bad. Don't they have better footage? Shut up and let us hear what the anchor says. Allison scolded. The anchor continued. Some witnesses believe this footage is from a movie set, but others claim it's real and that these two individuals were responsible for the massive explosion. We have footage of the bull creature tearing a man in half, and the Joker incinerating the bull creature, but we can't show it. Jacob leaned back on the couch, arms crossed, an amused smile on his lips. Next, the station brought in a paranormal expert. The man looked like a walking conspiracy theory. Wild hair, dark circles under his eyes, and papers scattered around him. The bull monster, he declared dramatically, is clearly the result of a failed government experiment. Probably military genetic testing. The anchor, barely hiding a smirk, asked, and the man who breathed fire at it, the theorist snorted. That's just alcohol and a lighter, a classic party trick. Allison couldn't hold back a snort. A party trick that turned a minotaur into ash. Jacob and Lydia chuckled. Allison turned and glared at him. Remind me again why you had to throw a supernatural coming-out party in the middle of Las Vegas. Jacob shrugged, stroking Malia's fur. Isn't this more fun? Lydia rolled her eyes. I bet a lot of people will lose sleep for a few days after seeing your little horror show. That's their problem. Jacob said dismissively. He gestured toward the TV. Change the channel. Let's see what the others are saying. Lydia changed to another news station. This time, two so-called experts were arguing on a split screen. It's an alien, one insisted, waving his arms dramatically. It's a mythological minotaur, obviously, shouted the other, slamming his hand on the desk. They started yelling over each other while the flustered anchor tried, and failed, to regain control. Jacob smirked. This is so much fun. Lydia switched again. Now, a stern-looking government representative was giving a press conference. Hey, why did you switch? I love those two crazy guys. Jacob complained. Shush, Allison said, leaning forward. These videos are all fake. The government representative said firmly. They are elaborate CGI hoaxes. As for the building, we believe the explosion was gang-related, and we are still investigating. Jacob laughed. The government's really doing its best to hide the truth. Lydia kept flipping channels and froze when the next report showed actor Bryan Cranston being escorted by police. Bryan Cranston was briefly detained by authorities after a limousine rented under his character's name, Walter White, was found abandoned near the explosion site. The person who rented it was described as looking exactly like the actor. Cranston has since been cleared of all suspicion. Jacob burst out laughing. Oh, come on. Poor guy was probably sleeping when it happened. Allison shook her head in disbelief. You really caused a mess. Come on, this is fun, Jacob said, his eyes sparkling with amusement. The whole country, maybe the whole world, is busy now discussing whether that minotaur is real. The government and others who know the truth are probably trying their best to hide it. And I bet there are supernatural groups out there who liked what I did and are thinking of doing the same, exposing the supernatural to everyone. Allison said, I just hope nothing bad happens, like a supernatural revolution or something. That would be even more fun. Jacob said with a grin, maybe I should start a revolution and rule this country. Lydia's eyes lit up. That's crazy, but I wouldn't mind being the wife of the President of the United States. Jacob shook his head. No, not the wife of the President, but the wife of the King of America. That means you and Allison would be queens. Lydia's smile widened. I like the sound of that even more. Hearing a low growl from the couch, Lydia quickly switched back to the animal channel. Malia immediately stopped growling and wagged her tail, satisfied. The three of them grabbed their phones and started scrolling. Within seconds, their social media feeds were flooded, clips of the fight, wild conspiracy threads, and hashtags like hashtag Vegas Monster and hashtag Fire Joker, all racking up millions of views. Jacob chuckled, his eyes glinting with amusement. Look at that. I'm trending. Lydia, scrolling through her phone, said, they've arrested a lot of clowns in Vegas since yesterday. Jacob laughed. That's hilarious. Allison sighed. I bet it's not just the people from the auction looking for you now. Probably the government, the FBI, and who knows who else. Maybe even NASA is looking for your alien ass. Jacob stretched lazily. They can look all they want. He smiled confidently. They'll never find me. Maybe next time I should make the news as Batman. Allison raised an eyebrow. There will be a next time? Definitely. Jacob said, so you girls should start thinking about what you want to disguise as. Lydia nodded. Let's just make sure not to cause any newsworthy trouble in Beacon Hills. That would draw a lot of unnecessary attention and would probably expose us. Of course. Jacob agreed. We'll only cause trouble in other states. I don't want to expose myself. Not yet, at least. Outside the mansion, Cogman, who had just finished tending the garden, heard a car park in front of the iron gate. He went to investigate and found Stiles and Scott waiting by the Jeep. Cogman nodded at Scott, then looked at Stiles. What do you want, pillow humper? Hey, don't call me that. Stiles protested. I was sleeping, okay? I thought the pillow was a girl. We're here to see Jacob. Cogman's eyes narrowed. Do you have an appointment? An appointment? Stiles frowned. I didn't know we needed an appointment to see him. I see. Cogman replied smoothly. Then you're uninvited guests. Should I dispose of you before you ruin the Sir's morning? Dispose of us? Stiles stepped back. Scott, hurry up and howl, or something to make Jacob come out before this psychopathic robot kills us. Can you just let me in, Cogman? Scott asked. Then you and Stiles can continue, whatever this is. No, don't leave me alone with him. Stiles pleaded. He might actually kill me. Cogman opened the gate and walked toward Stiles with a smirk. Don't worry. I won't kill you. I'll just break a few of your bones. Stiles opened his mouth to argue, but Jacob's voice came from inside the mansion. Cogman, stop messing around and let them in. As you wish, sir, Cogman said, stepping aside with an exaggerated gesture. Welcome. Scott walked toward the mansion while Stiles got back in his Jeep, drove through the gate, and parked in front of the entrance. They walked inside and found Lydia and Allison sitting together on a couch, while Malia lay lazily on Jacob's lap in a recliner. She lifted her head, watching the newcomers with curiosity. Stiles froze mid-step. Jacob? Did you catch a coyote and force it to be your pet? He walked over and reached out to pet her. Jacob raised a brow but didn't stop him. The next second, Malia bit Stiles' hand and shook it like a chew toy before letting go. Yeah, it bit me, Stiles yelled, clutching his hand as blood dripped onto the floor, though the wound was already starting to heal. Allison, Lydia, and Jacob burst out laughing. She's not my pet, you idiot. Jacob said, she's a were-coyote. Her name is Malia. Stiles blinked, his face shifting from pain to shock, then to realization. An evil smirk appeared. Oh, she's Malia. Your third wife, right? Jacob's laughter cut short. Wait, what? Lydia frowned. What do you mean, third wife? Allison turned to Jacob, arms crossed, eyes narrowing. Since when is Malia your wife? Even Malia tilted her furry head, giving Jacob a confused look. Jacob glared at Stiles. He's lying. No, I'm not. Stiles smiled. You literally told us. You said you had 3 wives when you and Melissa came back from your little date. Allison's expression froze. She walked over to Jacob, grabbed him by the ear, and yanked hard. Forget about Malia. Who is this Melissa he's talking about? Jacob winced. Ouch. Ow. He's lying, Allison. There was no date. Scott smiled, seeing a chance to get Jacob in trouble for taking his mom out. No, Stiles isn't lying, and Melissa's my mom. Lydia blinked in disbelief. I knew you were a scumbag, Jay, but your friend's mother? That's low, even for a pervert like you. Allison let go of his ear, but not before giving it one last painful twist. You better start explaining. Jacob rubbed his ear. There's nothing to explain. I had dinner with her once. She was sad, and I took her out to make her feel better. As a friend, nothing more. Stiles smirked. But I remember you wiped the tears from her face and called her beautiful, and Jacob glared daggers at him. Cogman, you can kill Stiles now. Cogman smiled and rubbed his hands together. As you wish, sir. Stiles immediately dove behind the couch where Allison and Lydia were sitting. Peering out from his hiding spot, he pleaded, Girls, save me from your psychotic butler, please. Allison smiled. He's just joking, Cogman. You can't kill Stiles. I know, my lady, Cogman said. But can I break a few of his bones? He'll heal. Allison shook her head. No, Cogman groaned. At least let me cut off his tongue. You can't do that either. Allison said. Stiles shuddered. That's even worse than breaking my bones, you psycho. Cogman glared at Stiles. Stop hiding behind my ladies and come face me like a man, you cowardly pillow humper. Jacob laughed. Pillow humper, what a nice nickname for Stiles. No, it's not nice. Stiles glared at Cogman. And you? I told you to stop calling me that. Cogman smirked. And what are you going to do about it? All right, Cogman, that's enough. Allison said. Stop arguing with Stiles. My lady, can I at least punch him in the face? Just once. Nope. Cogman groaned in frustration, then turned to an empty armchair and began hitting it with a series of karate chops, kicks, and punches until it fell over. He calmly put it back in place, fixed his suit, and smiled. Anyone fancy a drink? Allison shook her head with an amused smile. Yeah, go make us some tea and bring some snacks. Right away, my lady, Cogman said, then headed to the kitchen. Stiles cursed under his breath. Crazy bastard. Lydia smirked. Stiles, we can protect you from Cogman, but only if you promise to tell us everything Jay does when we're not around from now on. Jacob smirked and looked at Stiles. You can promise her, but she won't always be there to protect you from Cogman. And since you're a traitor, I'll go after Erica. Stiles panicked. No, you can kill me, but please don't go after Erica. I really like her. Jacob then turned to Scott, who was still smiling. And you seem so pleased with yourself. Even after I helped protect your mom from Peter, you came here and helped Stiles get me in trouble with my girls. So, you will pay for that. Scott stopped smiling. What are you going to do? Jacob said, I never thought about going after Melissa, but now I'm not so sure. Scott's eyes widened. What new? You can't do that. He looked pleadingly at Allison and Lydia. Help me, please. Tell him not to go after my mom. Allison shrugged. Sorry, if he's decided to go after her, we can't help you. He's a pervert, and we can't change that even if we wanted to. Seeing both Stiles and Scott looking depressed, Jacob felt better and smiled in satisfaction. But a sharp glare from Lydia and Allison made him cough awkwardly. All right, guys, he said, changing the subject. Tell me why you're here. Lydia interjected. Wait, first, Stiles, wipe your blood from the floor where you bled when Malia bit you. Stiles took a paper napkin from the table, wiped the drops of blood from the floor, and pocketed the napkin. Allison said, You can throw that in the trash. It's in the kitchen. Nope. Stiles replied, That psycho is in there. I'm not going anywhere near him. Jacob looked at Scott. So, do you want to talk about something? Scott sighed. We came to talk about what happened in Vegas. Jacob raised a brow. Vegas? What about it? Scott frowned. The explosion. The news. The bull-like monster and the Joker. He glanced between Jacob and the girls. You guys didn't see it? Jacob said, Oh, you're talking about that. We saw it on TV. Crazy stuff. Stiles sat next to Scott. Yeah, crazy. And somehow, while all that was happening, you four were out of town. Where were you guys? And that joker looks a little like you, Jacob. Lydia met his gaze evenly. We went to Monterey. Stiles squinted. Monterey? You expect me to believe that? Jacob smirked. Believe whatever you want, Stiles. Scott asked, do you guys think the supernatural will be exposed and the government and normal humans will start hunting supernatural creatures? Jacob said, the government is already trying its best to cover things up because, unlike you, they know that hunting all supernatural creatures is an impossible, bad idea. Stiles nodded. Yeah, first of all, supernatural creatures have superpowers. And no one knows how many humans are actually supernatural. It could be a quarter or maybe even half of the world population. Trying to hunt them all is a stupid idea that will result in a war between supernatural creatures and normal humans. You can imagine how that will end. Scott asked, are you guys saying the government is aware of the supernatural side of the world? Lydia nodded. Of course. And I think most of the higher-ups are witches, wizards, vampires, or other creatures who can control people mentally. Or they're normal humans who have a creature like that working for them. Or they work for one. Jacob said, Scott, you should stop thinking that the only people who know about supernatural creatures are us and a few others. I'm sure billions of people are either supernatural themselves or know about the supernatural. They kept talking about what happened in Vegas and checking the news. Cogman brought tea and some snacks, and they continued their conversation until 2 p.m. when he called them for lunch. After lunch, Cogman drove Allison and Lydia back to their parents' houses, leaving Scott and Stiles in the mansion with Jacob and Malia. Jacob asked, by the way, Scott, did you talk to your boss about what you are and what he is? Scott said, yeah, I had a good talk with him. Like you said, he's a druid. He already helped me put a barrier of mountain ash around my house and taught me and my mom how to activate it. Stiles added, he put one around my house, too. Jacob smirked. Did he ask you if you know what I am? Scott nodded. He did. I told him you're shapeshifter, but I have no idea what you are. Jacob smirked. I see. Anyway, let's go play some video games. We haven't played in a while. With that, they went to the gaming room and started playing. After 2 hours, Stiles and Scott left. Jacob went to the bathroom and poured Estetha's bath water directly from his pocket dimension into the toilet. Then he took Malia for a walk in the woods. She led the way to a crash car and sat there, staring at it. Jacob sat next to her, stroking her fur, and didn't say a word. When the sky began to darken, they returned to the mansion. 10 days had passed since Jacob burned the auction building in Vegas. In those 10 days, not much had happened. The commotion Jacob caused in Vegas died down, but people all around the country still talked about the Minotaur. Peter and Derek were lying low. The Argents hadn't tracked them down, and Jacob's daily sign-ins these past 10 days had yielded only kitchen essentials or normal food like cans of tuna or a few dollars. That morning, he woke to the familiar weight and warmth of Malia curled against him, tucked into the hollow of his arm like a living pillow. Allison and Lydia had spent the night at their parent houses. Jacob stroked her fur gently and thought. System sign-in. Daily sign-in successful. Rewards obtained. A plunger for your toilet. $50. A measuring tape. He sighed. I've been really unlucky these past few days. He got out of bed, waking Malia in the process. Sorry, go back to sleep. I've got school. She curled back up and was soon asleep again. He took a quick shower, dressed, and went downstairs. Cogman was waiting in the kitchen. Morning, Cogman. Jacob said, Good morning, sir. Cogman replied, Should I drive you to school today, sir, or are you taking your bike? No, I'll take my bike today, Jacob said, grabbing a slice of toast. Very well, sir. Cogman said. After finishing his meal, Jacob rode his bike to school. At school, Jacob met Scott and Stiles. Morning, guys. Jacob said. Morning. Scott and Stiles answered in unison. Jacob raised a brow at how cheerful they seemed. Why are you two smiling like idiots? Did something good happen? Stiles pointed toward the parking lot, where Jackson had just climbed out of his Porsche, looking confident as he walked toward the school. We took Jackson to Peter yesterday, and Peter gave him the bite. Jackson paid us 10 grand. I see, Jacob said. He glanced at Jackson and thought, I wonder if he's still going to turn into a Kanema. Shaking off the thought, he turned to Scott. Did you pick out a car yet? Yeah, Scott said, grinning. I found a nice 2000 Mustang GT for $6,000. It's owned by an older gentleman. The mileage is a little less than 50,000, and it's in great condition. Title and registration will cost an extra $600, so $6,600 total. I gave Stiles $1,000. I gave my mom $2 grand, kept $400 for myself, and I'm going to get the car today after school. Jacob tilted his head. Did you tell Melissa where the money came from? Scott said, I told her I did a werewolf a favor, and he gifted me 10 grand. She took the $2,000 and said she really needs it to pay some bills. How is she, by the way? Jacob asked. I should give her a visit. No, you stay away from her. Scott snapped. Jacob said, Relax, I'm 16. I don't want to date your mom. Then he smiled. I just want to build a good relationship with her and make sure she stays single until I turn 18. Scott's eyes flashed yellow, and he let out a low, warning growl. Jacob laughed and ran off toward Allison and Lydia, who had just arrived at school. Scott calmed down and looked at Stiles, who was quieter than usual. What? No sarcastic comment. I've got plenty. Stiles shrugged. But I don't want to say anything about Jacob dating your mom in front of him. I don't want him getting upset and going after Erica. Then he smirked. But now that he's gone, I can say something sarcastic about your future stepdad if you want. Scott got angry when he heard the word stepdad. You know what? I think I'll go after Erica myself. Stiles stared at him wide-eyed for a second, then burst out laughing. Why are you laughing? Scott said, I'm serious. Ah ha ha ha. You are serious. Stiles managed to say between laughs. Ha ha ha. Stop laughing, Scott said, growing more frustrated. Stiles finally caught his breath, wiping a tear from his eye. I'm sorry, it's just, that's the funniest thing you've ever said. You think I couldn't get her if I wanted to? Scott challenged. I thought my laughing was an obvious answer. Stiles retorted. Well, you think you have it, I don't. You used to be the lacrosse co-captain, but now I'm just as good as you after Jacob gave me that potion. If I wanted to be captain, I could, but since we're best friends, I don't want to take that from you. Besides, Erica likes me, and she would never be interested in your stupid ass. Hey, you didn't have to call me stupid. Scott grumbled. Aren't you failing a few classes? Stiles shot back. Not anymore, Scott said, a touch of pride in his voice. Stiles snorted. Anyway, I thought we were brothers. I never thought I'd have to worry about you going after my girlfriend. I really want to beat your ass for saying you'd go after her. So, I'm not talking to you for the rest of the morning. With that, Stiles turned and walked into the school building, leaving Scott standing alone, scratching his head awkwardly. After school, there was a lacrosse game, and Jacob and the girls went to see it since there was nothing else to do. In the bleachers, Allison saw her parents and Kate sitting there. What are they doing here? She asked. Jacob said, I don't know. If I have to guess, maybe they're looking for Peter's betas since they couldn't find him and Derek. I'm going to ask them, Allison said, then walked toward her parents. Jacob noticed Melissa sitting beside Sheriff Stilinski. He took Lydia's hand, walked over, and sat next to her. Jacob, how are you? Melissa greeted with a warm smile as he sat. Hey, Melissa, long time no see. Jacob said, Is Scott still making trouble for you? Melissa chuckled. No, he's surprisingly well-behaved, more than usual since the last time I saw you. Then Jacob looked at Scott on the field, who was glaring at him. Is he? Anyway, if you want to teach him a lesson, just let me know. Melissa reached over and twisted his ear lightly. I could take care of my son, kid. But thanks. Lydia, on Jacob's other side, pinched him. He took the hand that was pinching him and kissed it, making her pout. The game started, and Scott was playing rough. Instead of reprimanding him, Coach was actually cheering him on and arguing with the referee every time a foul was whistled against Scott. As the game continued, Scott looked at the bleachers, where his mom wasn't even paying attention to him, but was talking and laughing with Jacob. His eyes glowed, and he ran to one of his own teammates, bumped him hard, took the ball, and ran toward the opposite team's goal to score. Stiles caught up with Scott. Scott, calm down. Let's go check on Sean. I think you hurt him badly. I swear, when you hit him, I heard his bones breaking. Scott came back to his senses and walked with Stiles toward his teammate to check on him. But the guy named Sean stood up and pushed Scott away. I'm fine, Sean snapped as he walked off. As Sean walked away, Scott looked at Stiles and whispered, Sean is like me. I think he just shifted when he pushed me. Stiles whispered back, a werewolf. Scott said, no, he's something else. And whatever he is, he smells bad. Like really bad. Jacob, sitting in the bleachers, felt a wave of disgust the moment Sean shifted and pushed Scott away. Jay, Lydia whispered, leaning close. I don't like that guy who just pushed Scott. He feels wrong. Jacob made sure the sheriff doesn't hear them and said, I know. I think he's a Wendigo. Are you sure? Lydia asked. Jacob said, yes. You can't tell when a Wendigo doesn't shift, but when they do, they smell rotten, and he just shifted when he shoved Scott. You stay here with Melissa. Melissa, who was listening, whispered, leaning close. What's a Wendigo? Lydia, tell her. Jacob said. Lydia nodded, and Jacob got down from the bleachers. He walked near the field and called Stiles over. Stiles jogged over. Can you stop messing around and keep away from Melissa, at least until the game's over? Scott is going to lose control and hurt someone. Don't worry about that. Jacob said. Tell me, what's the last name of that guy, Sean? Walcott, Stiles said. Jacob thought. So, he is the Wendigo from Season 4. He and his family have a secret stash of human bodies in their basement. Stiles brought Jacob out of his thoughts. Why are you asking about his last name? Is it because he's a shapeshifter too? No, it's because he's a Wendigo, and I need his last name to know where he lives. Jacob said. Stiles frowned. What are you going to do? Let's just say your dad will be very busy tomorrow. Jacob glanced back at the field. Now go play your stupid game. Coach is coming this way, and I don't feel like talking to him. Stiles nodded and didn't ask any more questions. He jogged back to continue the game as Jacob moved to a remote corner of the lacrosse field and spoke to Allison telepathically. Allison, come here and bring your parents too. Not long after, Allison, her parents, and Kate came and stood next to him. Victoria said, Allison said you wanted to talk to us. What's going on? Jacob's expression was serious. There's a Wendigo on the field right now. And you know what that means, right? Chris frowned. If that's true, there's probably a family of them living here in Beacon Hills. Yes, and we can't let them live past tonight. Jacob said, so this is your chance to show Allison what hunters really should do. Chris nodded. Do you know where he lives? Jacob shook his head. No, just his full name, Sean Walcott. That's good enough. Chris said, stepping aside and pulling out his phone. I'll make a few calls. As Chris walked off, Victoria turned to Jacob. How do you know he's a Wendigo? He shifted, and I caught his scent. Jacob said, I've dealt with Wendigos before. Although it was Cogman who killed them, I still remember their scent. They smell like rotting flesh. Kate said, I've dealt with one before. Nasty things, but not that strong. They're easy to kill. I guess you've never met one in its alpha form. Jacob said, I've read about them and have a picture of a Wendigo in its alpha form, and it is not pretty to look at, a deer skull for a head, a furry body, and red glowing eyes instead of white. They're monsters among monsters. Victoria nodded. We have that picture in the bestiary too, but no one has seen an alpha Wendigo in centuries. Allison said, and I hope we don't see it either. She looked at Jacob. Do you think Sean's family has an alpha? Jacob shook his head. Probably not. Chris rejoined them, slipping his phone back into his pocket. I got their address. We'll hit them tonight at 11 p.m. All right, Jacob said. You guys get ready. Cogman and I will join you at your place. He'll soak for a week if I don't take him with us tonight, and he'll probably start playing creepy music on his piano. I'd rather not wake up to him playing creepy music at 3 a.m. Allison laughed. Yeah, that sounds exactly like him. Jacob smirked. Are you going with your parents? Or with me and Lydia? I'll go with my parents. Allison said, I want to see how they prepare for a hunt. Jacob leaned in, kissed her, and said, All right then, I'll meet you at your parents' house. Then he started walking toward Lydia, waving over his shoulder. See you guys later. As he reached Melissa and Lydia, he kissed Melissa on the cheek and said, Good night. Melissa raised a brow. You're not going after that Wendigo, are you? Yes, we are. Jacob said, "We can't leave something that dangerous living in Beacon Hills. Wendigos eat people, Melissa. Is Scott going with you?" She asked, concern clear in her voice. "No, he doesn't want to kill people, even monsters like Wendigos, so we will not take him with us," Jacob said, seeing that Melissa's expression had changed and she obviously didn't agree with killing people. Jacob sighed. "Don't give me that look, Melissa. If you want, I'll call you and Scott afterward. You can see for yourself what Wendigos really do. And don't worry, I would never encourage Scott to take a life. He chose not to kill, and I respect his choice." Melissa thought for a moment, then nodded. "All right, call me when it's done. I want to see with my own eyes how horrible they really are." Jacob smiled faintly. "All right." He and Lydia walked toward the parking lot. "Did you bring your car?" he asked. Lydia said, "No, I came in Allison's car. She drove to school today." "Then let's ride my bike home," Jacob said, tossing her a helmet. They climbed onto his bike and rode off toward the mansion. Jacob and Lydia arrived home and greeted Malia. Then, Jacob headed to the kitchen, where he found Cogman cooking and singing a depressing British war song. "Cogman, hurry up and finish cooking. We have work to do," Jacob said. "And please stop singing that horrible song." Cogman stopped cooking and looked at Jacob with excitement. "What kind of work are we talking about, sir?" "The kind you love," Jacob replied. Cogman's eyes lit up. "What are we killing tonight?" "A family of Wendigos." "Then let's go now. You can have dinner later, sir," Cogman urged, already moving to put the food away. Jacob held up a hand. "Either you feed me, or we are not going. And we're not leaving until 10:30. We'll pass by the Argent's house first, then we'll go after the Wendigos." Jacob left the kitchen, leaving Cogman to cook in a suddenly good mood, now humming a happy tune. After dinner, Cogman drove Lydia and Jacob to the Argent's house. Arriving there, Jacob contacted Allison telepathically. "Allison, we are outside. Are you guys ready yet?" "We are. Just 5 minutes and we'll be out," she replied. "Are you going to ride with us or take the Rolls Royce?" "I think you should ride with us. The Royce is too eye-catching." "All right, we'll ride with you guys." 5 minutes later, the Argents emerged. Lydia and Jacob rode with Allison and her parents, while Cogman rode with Kate in her car, an arrangement that made her visibly nervous. After a short drive, they parked a fair distance from the Wendigo family's house. "So what's the plan now?" Jacob asked. Chris said, "We'll go and knock on the door and force our way inside after they open it." "That's it." Jacob raised an eyebrow. "I thought you were going to disguise yourselves as a lost couple or salesman or something. This is just boring. You guys suck." Allison shot him a glare. He raised his hands in surrender. Fine. I'll shut up." Jacob looked out of the car window and spotted Sean on his bicycle heading toward his house. "Wait here," he said. "I'll be right back." "Where are you going?" Allison asked. "Just wait." He got out of the car and, after making sure no one was watching, used his super speed. He caught Sean, dragged him into a dark alley, and dropped him on the ground. Sean was startled. Everything happened so fast. Before he could react, he found himself in a dark alley on the ground. He stood up and looked at Jacob. "Who are you? And what do?" He recognized Jacob. "Wait, I've seen you in school before. What do you want?" Jacob didn't bother to answer. His hand moved in a blur, catching Sean by the throat. He inserted his claws into the back of Sean's neck and began reading his memories. When he was done, Jacob's eyes glowed golden, his face a mask of rage. He choked Sean and slammed him against the wall. "You damn monster! How many people have you and your family eaten?" Sean, dazed from the forcible memory reading, looked at Jacob with terror. He shifted, his eyes glowed white and his teeth became sharp and yellow. He struggled violently, trying to free himself from Jacob's grip, but he couldn't move Jacob's arm at all. The moment Sean shifted, a horrible, rotten smell hit Jacob like a physical punch. Disgusted, Jacob punched him, knocking him unconscious and nearly breaking his skull. He watched Sean shift back to normal after losing consciousness, spat to the side, and muttered, "Disgusting bastard." Then he dragged Sean's limp body back to the cars. Allison and the others saw him coming and got out. Lydia looked at Jacob, concerned. "What's wrong? You look pissed." "I read his memories." Jacob said, his voice grim. Allison asked, "What did you see?" Their basement is a cold room, filled with human bodies, hanging like butchered cattle. Lydia's eyes widened. "How many bodies are we talking about?" "Sean doesn't know the exact number," Jacob said grimly, "but he knows there are more than 20. His parents and older brother hunt outside of Beacon Hills to avoid suspicion, driving to other towns and cities to find their victims. Then they bring them back here. Sometimes they bring their victims alive so they can kill them slowly. They like fresh blood. Damn those monsters," Allison muttered, her voice shaking with anger. Jacob added, "And they have guests tonight." He then looked at Kate. "Remember the alpha Wendigo we talked about?" Kate's eyes widened. "One of them is an alpha Wendigo." Jacob nodded. "Yes, Sean's grandfather is an alpha Wendigo, and his grandmother is almost an alpha, too. Apparently, for a Wendigo to reach alpha status, it needs to eat the organs of other alpha creatures. According to Sean's memories, his grandfather ate 2 alpha werewolves and an alpha were-gator to become an alpha. His grandmother has only eaten 1 alpha werewolf, so although she is stronger than normal Wendigos, she hasn't become a full alpha yet." Victoria said, "That is going to be a problem." "There is no problem," Jacob stated firmly. "You guys take care of Sean's brother and parents. Leave the grandparents for us. Now let's go. They caught a guy for dinner, so we better hurry. We might be able to save him." As they walked toward Sean's house, a system window appeared in front of Jacob's eyes. Available sign-in. Location sign-in. Host can sign in inside the Wendigo's basement. Jacob thought. Finally, a location sign-in. System, let's not talk about event sign-ins, but why didn't you give me a quest or a location sign-in opportunity when I went to Vegas? Host can only get quests and location sign-ins from events and locations related to the Teen Wolf series canon. Jacob complained internally. "You are too cheap, system." Inside the Walcott house, the air was warm and filled with the savory, herb-laden scent of a home-cooked meal, yet beneath it lay a thick, coppery undertone of blood and the faint, sickly smell of decay. A welcome home cross-stitch hung on the wall beside a framed family photo where everyone smiled a little too widely, their eyes a touch too hungry. In the dining room, Christina Walcott, a woman with a kind face and a floral apron, placed a large platter of oven-roasted ribs on the table. The meat was glazed and beautifully presented, but to a trained eye, the bone structure was unnervingly, unmistakably human. David Walcott, the picture of a proud father and husband, leaned in, picked up a rib, and took a hearty bite. He chewed thoughtfully. "As expected from you, Christina, the taste is great," he said, smiling at his wife. "But these ribs are a bit too lean. You know how my mom loves juicy meat." Christina wiped her hands on her apron and gestured with a nod towards the corner of the room, where a terrified fat man was tied to a chair, gagged, his face pale and slick with sweat. "Aren't we eating him?" she said sweetly. "He is juicy enough." David chuckled. "True, true." Their older son, Michael, entered the room, his eyes scanning the table. "Mom, did you make me my favorite?" "Of course, honey." Christina beamed. "The meat loaf is in the kitchen. I made it from the thighs of that girl you caught yourself." Michael kissed his mother's cheek. "You're the best." At the head of the table, the grandfather drummed his fingers impatiently. "Where is Sean? I'm starving." His voice was a dry rasp. "I talked to him 10 minutes ago," David said, checking his watch. "He said he was on his way home." Just then, a knock echoed from the front door. "See? That's him," David said. "Michael, open the door for your brother." Michael jogged to the door and pulled it open, a greeting smile on his lips that died instantly. It wasn't Sean. Cogman stood on the doorstep, impeccably dressed and wearing a serene smile. "Good evening." Michael's eyes darted down and saw his younger brother, unconscious and being held up like a sack of potatoes by the cheerful butler. Behind Cogman, he saw a crowd of grim-faced strangers, Jacob, the Argents, and Lydia. "Who are you people?" Michael snarled, his eyes beginning to glow a sickly white. "What did you do to Sean?" Cogman's smile didn't falter. "He is fine. He is just unconscious. As for us," he said, his voice dripping with fake politeness, "we are here to have fun with your family." Before Michael could process the statement, Cogman's fist shot out with piston-like force. It connected with his face with a sickening crunch, sending the young Wendigo flying backward through the entryway. In a flash, Cogman was on him again, delivering a brutal kick that launched him into the dining room to crash against the table. Plates and cutlery clattered to the floor as Cogman stepped calmly into the room. Jacob and the others entered the house, closed the door behind them, and followed Cogman into the dining room. The moment David and Christina saw their son Michael crash into the dining table and their younger boy, Sean, limp in Cogman's grip, their human facades dissolved. Their eyes glowed a sickly white, their teeth sharpened into yellowed, jagged fangs, and the disgusting, rotten scent of their true nature flooded the room. But they didn't get a chance to attack. Victoria, Chris, and Kate raised their silenced weapons and fired. David, Christina, and the dazed Michael were shot between the eyes and dropped dead to the floor. Simultaneously, Cogman looked down at the unconscious Sean in his grasp. With a casual motion, his hand shot into the boy's chest and emerged clutching a still-beating heart. He dropped the body with a dismissive thud. The two grandparents, who had been frozen in shock, snapped back to their senses. The grandmother shifted with a guttural snarl. She was far stronger than her children. Her eyes blazed white, her face elongated into a deer-like visage, and her fingers sprouted into long, razor-sharp claws. She lunged at the nearest threat, Victoria. Victoria raised her gun, but the Wendigo grandmother was impossibly fast, dodging the silent shot. She closed the distance, her claws poised to slash Victoria's throat. But a powerful gust of wind erupted from Allison's mouth, slamming into the Wendigo grandmother and sending her crashing into the far wall. Allison stepped forward, her eyes glowing green, and the air around her hummed with energy. "Mom, let me take care of her," she said, her voice steady. The katana, Shusway, materialized from her space ring into her hand. As her fingers closed around the hilt, a swirling coat of green wind sheathed the blade. The Wendigo grandmother scrambled out of the shattered drywall with a furious roar and charged again. Allison was ready. She met the charge with a single, fluid slash. A streak of green light followed the blade's path, and the Wendigo's arm flew from her body, landing with a wet thud. The creature staggered back, shrieking in agony. A low, bone-chilling growl filled the room. The grandfather was shifting. His body expanded, cracking and stretching until he stood nearly 8 feet tall. His head transformed completely into a white deer skull with jagged antlers, and his eyes glowed red. With a speed that turned his huge body into a blur, he launched himself at Allison. Jacob watched, arms crossed. He decided to let Allison defend herself. Allison reacted instantly, raising her free hand. A shimmering energy shield materialized in front of her. The Alpha Wendigo's massive claws slammed into it with a sound like shattering glass. The shield cracked violently but held, the force of the blow causing Allison to grit her teeth and slide back a few inches. The Alpha Wendigo reared back for another strike, but Jacob had seen enough. In a burst of motion, he appeared between Allison's shield and the Wendigo. He leaped, his own hand closing around the base of the Wendigo's antlered skull. With raw, overwhelming force, he slammed the massive creature face first into the hardwood floor. The impact was thunderous, splintering the boards and cracking the bone of the Wendigo's skull. A pained, gurgling roar escaped the Wendigo. Jacob stood up, dusted off his hands, and delivered a brutal kick to the monster's side, sending it skidding across the room to stop at Cogman's feet. "He is all yours," Jacob said calmly. Cogman's eyes lit up. "Thank you, sir." "And Cogman," Jacob added, his voice dropping to a cold, flat tone. Cogman, who had just punched the struggling Wendigo back to the ground, looked up. "Yes, sir. Make his death as painful and slow as possible." Cogman gave a deep, theatrical bow. "With pleasure, sir." He grabbed one of the Wendigo's antlers. "Let's have some fun." With a sickening crack, he broke the antler off and immediately drove the sharp, broken end deep into the Wendigo's chest. Jacob waved a hand in front of his nose. Cogman, drag him to another room and have all the fun you want with him. He stinks. Of course, sir. Cogman began dragging the shrieking, struggling alpha Wendigo away, punching and kicking him as he went. The angry, pained roars of the Wendigo echoed from the hallway. The grandmother, clutching her severed stump, saw her powerful alpha husband being dragged away like a toy. Knowing she was doomed, she made a desperate attempt to escape, turning to sprint towards the nearest window. Allison didn't even move from her spot. She simply gestured with her free hand, and two razor-sharp wind arrows shot forth. They struck the grandmother, embedding themselves in the back of her knees. The creature crumpled to the floor with a cry. She turned her deer-like face toward Allison, a final, hateful growl rumbling in her throat. Allison responded with two dismissive flicks of her wrist. Two crescent blades of wind shot from Shusway, slicing through the air and through the Wendigo's body with a sickening, wet sound. The creature fell apart into several cleanly severed pieces. Silence descended upon the ravaged dining room, broken only by the wet, choking screams and the sound of splintering bone that continued to emanate from down the hall. Chris looked at Jacob and said, "Your butler is a psychopath." Jacob nodded his head, a faint, grim smile on his lips. "Yeah, he is. I almost feel sorry for that poor bastard he's having fun with."
Hello, everyone. As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500-plus novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.